Good evening and welcome to the April 24th, 2014 regular meeting of the Edina School Board. We do have a quorum this evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We had a special meeting and a regular meeting on March 17th, a special meeting on March 27th, and a special meeting on April 15th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve those minutes. Because David Goldstein is joining us by phone, we will have roll call votes this evening. Any addition or corrections to the minutes as written? Seeing none, we'll now proceed to a roll call.
Cella? Aye. Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Motion carries. We do have a series of recognitions tonight. Rick, could you start us out there?
I will. If we could have Mark Kivamaki come up. Mark is one of those amazing spellers, 7th grader at Valley View, right here, Mark. Taking first place in the 7-county Metro Regional Spelling Bee. And Mark, where are you headed now?
The National Spelling Bee,
Wow.
And when is that?
May 25th through the 31st.
So talk a little bit about your experience of going to that regional level, and what was the word that, of course, we got to know what was that big word for you, and then a little bit how you're preparing for going out to Washington.
So for the regional bee, I started with the school bee, and I won that in a tiebreaker round, and I wasn't expecting to win the school bee. And then, so we had a regional qualifying test that was online after that, and it was only with words that were on the study list. So I did pretty well at that, and I wasn't too worried. But I didn't expect to win the regionals. And then eventually it got down to like maybe the last 5 people. I started getting really nervous, and I was wondering, like, am I going to win? And that was the first time that thought really crossed my mind. And my winning word was serenity.
Oh.
So we're going to ask the board chair how to spell that. No. So when do you head out now? You head out to Washington, and what are you thinking you're going to experience out there? I mean, it's just a great leadership experience for you, and you've already done great work. So what do you think it's going to be like?
Well, I'm pretty excited because the National Spelling Bee is a pretty prestigious competition, and I'm also excited to meet new people who share my interests.
Well, Mark, on behalf of the entire community, congratulations, and we're going to wish you the best of luck out in Washington. Avery Hanks, if he's here. Avery, there he is. An 8th grader at Valley View. And this is a new one for me, Avery, a sculptor. Gold medal National Scholastic Art and Writing Competition. Talk a little bit about your interest in sculpting and what this award's about, and a little bit about your love of sculpting.
Well, this is my first year sculpting, and my second year doing this competition. I like to do photography a lot, but sculpture, I just wanted to try to do every single category that there was, and sculpture sounded like a really good idea. And the sculpture is about how, like, our consumer-driven culture has kind of gotten out of hand, and we need to take control of it and take better care of our natural resources.
And I don't know if people have seen the work, but it's very clever, it's very creative, and it tells much more than just sculpting. I mean, it really does tell your commitment or your interest in the environment. And so congratulations to you. I wish you best luck in the future, and it's quite an honor. Congratulations. Michael Tang. Michael is a 9th grader at Valley View. And Michael is going to be recognized twice today for his great work. Michael, do you like math?
Yes.
I think so. I think so. You were in first place in the Minnesota State High School Math League State Tournament, which you won in overtime. Is that correct? Talk a little bit about that competition and what did it mean to win in overtime? How does that all take place?
Well, they call up the 10 best people based on a qualifying round, and you write your answers. It's at most 2 minutes per question, so it's really quick. And you write your answers on whiteboards. And so how it happened in overtime, well, this one person, during the last question, we thought he had the answer right, but I think he wrote down some numbers wrong. So we were actually still tied. So there were a few people left in overtime, and it was sudden death. So the first person to answer a question correctly would win. And so for the first overtime question, I was the only one to answer it, and so I won.
Wow.
Michael, that's amazing. As a ninth grader. And then you had a perfect score in the American Mathematics Competition. You're one of 9 in the nation to get that perfect score.
Unbelievable.
So what's the interest in math? What do you enjoy about it so much? How, just tell us a little bit about that. We've got some young scholars out here that are just early in their years, the importance of math, and just if you could talk a little bit about that, it'd be great.
Well, my interest for math started last year at a state math counts competition. I joined the middle school math team, and so we qualified for the state competition. I like math mainly because I think of it like sort of a puzzle or a game. You get to learn new things, discover new things by yourself. That's why I like math.
Well, I'll tell you what, Michael, that's quite an accomplishment. We wish you the best in the future, and congratulations on these great accomplishments. Good job, Michael. Now we want to recognize our AAA award winners for this school year at Edina High School. So Mark Bryan and Jessica Bentley, if they could come forward. 2 very active people at Edina High School. Mark is very active and takes on challenges with the AP National Merit Semifinalist, a band member, a football player, and being recognized as a AAA award winner. Busy guy.
Yeah.
What drives you like that?
I feel like I'm a motivated individual, kind of just challenging myself, being well-rounded, both academically, athletically, and extracurriculars. So.
That's great. And next year, your plans are?
I'm going to Cornell to study engineering, so it's going to be fun.
So how will some of the experience you have here, do you think, help you, not just in college, but into the future? That you had this broad experience, you were very active, you had a lot of leadership opportunities.
Well, I hope to maintain these types of involvements. For instance, I was involved with the jazz band at Edina High School as a guitarist, so I hope to get involved with that at Cornell. So.
Jessica, same type of schedule. I mean, it looks like all kinds of AP courses, band and orchestra, National Merit Commended Scholar, Nordic Ski, track and field, softball, and cross country. Do you sleep?
Not enough.
Okay. So again, talk about what's the passion? I mean, you're active all year round in activities. What drives you?
I really don't like to have downtime. I like to have just a tight schedule. It just keeps me focused and kind of helps things to work out better. I mean, just like time management, keeping everything going all the time.
That's great. And your plans for next year?
I'll be at St. Olaf College, and I'll be playing softball for sure, and then in band, and maybe cross country.
I think you're going to be busy.
Okay.
Mark and Jessica, congratulations on this great recognition. Oh, Jessica, wait, we've got one more. That's right. We've got a double winner because you also were recognized as the Athena Award winner, and that's a recognition for a top women's athlete, and so we congratulate you on that as well. So
Thank you.
Congratulations. Now we've got the Edina hockey team joining us, making their annual visit. Is that what this is, guys? Come on in, we'll make a couple rows if we can. There you are, right there.
There's a lot of you.
So, the guy in the white shirt, Captain Guy. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk a little bit about the season, about your memories, some of the highs and lows of a hockey season for the Edina Hornets.
I mean, obviously, teams have up and downs. We knew that we weren't going to be perfect. But I think coaches stressed enough that if we dedicate our 96 days to the season, that the outcome would be pleasing, and sure enough, it did. And we were fortunate that we came up on top, and I couldn't ask for a better group of guys. And the community, it was just an amazing experience.
So there are just people who dream, including the superintendent, of being on the ice, so you wouldn't want that. But what is that experience on the ice at that state tournament game, finals, national anthems playing, they're about ready to drop the puck? What's that emotional feeling you're having?
I mean, when it's happening, you don't really know that there's 18,000 around you. But, I mean, beginning of the game, it's, a little jittery. But as soon as the buzzer rang and we got the victory, it was incredible. And, I mean, words can't describe what we were feeling. And, I mean, it's just great to be the best team in the state at the end of the season. It just, hard work pays off.
Great. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to pass the mic along. If you give us your name, your grade level, if you're a graduating senior, if you could give us maybe your plans for next year, we'll just send it all the way down, and then we want to make sure we get the coaches in here as well, but we'll start off.
I'm Dylan Malmquist, and I'm a junior.
I'm Matt Masterman, I'm a junior.
Colin Munson, I'm a senior, I don't know yet.
I'm Sam Foose, I'm a junior.
Alec Astrick, I'm a senior, and I don't know yet.
I'm Kiefer Bellows, and I'm a sophomore.
Tyler Nanny, and I'll be playing juniors at Sioux Falls next year and then off to Ohio State.
I'm Paul Meyer, and I'm a junior. Ryan Zulsdorf, sophomore.
Kobe Bowe, junior.
I'm Ben Foley, and I'm a junior.
Casey Dornbach, sophomore.
Andrew Ockel, senior, and I'm undecided for next year.
Henry Bowlby, and I'm a junior.
I'm Calvin Pugh, I'm a freshman.
Garrett Waite, and I'm a sophomore.
Patrick Howe, junior.
Parker Mismash, junior. Kurt Giles, senior.
Dave Langevin, grandpa. Dan DeLandis, dad.
Dick Blueston, senior citizen, and I don't know yet.
And Dave Terwilliger.
Coach Giles, we got to ask you a couple questions here.
Sure.
So this was a lot of change in this team from your previous championship. How did you build it? And you've got this range of athletes from freshmen through seniors. Talk about how you, from a coaching standpoint and from a leadership standpoint, how you gel this together.
I think the biggest thing was we lost 12 kids from our championship team last year, and everybody kind of counted us out in this whole process. But as you can see, we're very, very fortunate to have not only great athletes, but really, really good quality kids. And that's the key to the whole program. You can find good hockey players in a lot of different places, but it's the quality of the kids, the character of the kids that really makes a difference in how successful we are. We have a wonderful coaching staff that have been together for a long period of time. But we have a great opportunity here in a great community to work with great kids. I mean, we're very, very fortunate. We feel very fortunate. As far as the team chemistry, pulling the team together and things like that, we had great leadership from within the team. That just didn't mean the seniors. It meant all the classes from freshmen all the way up through seniors. And they just gelled at the right time. They all got along, as we knew it anyway. So, I mean, there's certain disagreements and those types of things. They're kids, but I've got to give them an awful lot of credit. They came together and played. I think I've been doing this, and coaching staff have been doing this for 15 years now, and this was maybe the best team we've ever had. It really has. It really is. Their skating abilities, their puck handling abilities, the mental approach to the game. This team here, I give them the credit of being one of the top teams we've ever had.
Well, Edina Hockey Hornets, congratulations.
Squeeze that in. Get in that picture. Not like quite being on the ice after the game. That's close.
Congratulations, team.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Next, we welcome Concord.
It's a tough act to follow.
So, Rick, if you could talk about your state championships at this time.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we, not yet. We're just grooming so far. Well, thanks, Rick Sandstead, principal, Concord Elementary School. And we're here to share, so lots of great things happening at Concord. We had a food drive going this week. There's a little story on KSTP yesterday. So that was fun to share some of that good news. The Wildcat Wellness team is up and doing great things at Concord. We're planting seeds for our garden coming up, so lots of great stuff happening. Tonight we want to share a little bit of a real partnership project, and so I'm going to introduce, and then we'll let the kids share some of the story, and Ms. Holland. So Lori Holland, our media specialist, is here. Phoebe Zamoff is here. Kaya Shapiro, yeah, you can wave or say hi. Jay Shapiro, Emma Richards, and Lily Whiteside are here to share some of their experiences. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
Well, over the past few years at Concord, we've noticed that the kids have demonstrated a growing love of mobile devices. And at the same time, Concord has been investing quite a lot of money in iPads and Chromebooks. And it quickly became clear to me that it was time for a Library in My Pocket campaign. With access to any internet-connected mobile device, students had the ability to bring an entire library's worth of books and resources with them almost anywhere they went. No need to sit and play games on your device when you can just as easily download and enjoy a book, or so the librarian supposes. The Library in Your Pocket website includes valuable reference resources like our online databases, our library catalog, and BrainPop, a school favorite. It also includes favorite resources like Tumble Books and Starfall. But new this year is something called Mac and Via. Mac and Via is a collection of more than 200 ebooks, which began as an Ed Fund grant and continues with great support from our PTO. It contains both fiction and nonfiction titles at all levels, specifically chosen for the students and teachers at Concord. In fact, many of the titles were selected especially to support our science and social studies curriculum and the new language arts standards, with their emphasis on reading nonfiction. The intent was teachers could use the books for whole class instruction by projecting them on their smartboards, or the students could use them for research or homework help on devices and computers in the classroom and at home. Students and families are enjoying the free resource because it ensures their children are never without books, and teachers are finding the ebooks to be valuable teaching tools. And those accountable to sticking to a budget, like Mac and Via too, because for $50 or less, an entire class can log in and have access to the same title at the same time. That's for selected titles only. Being able to put the library in our pockets this year has been exciting. We continue to find new ways of using the resource and new titles we are anxious to add. This is not to say, however, that we're ready to give up our print collection. Students still love coming to the library to browse for books, talk about books, get book recommendations, check out books, and read books printed on paper. What they appreciate, however, is being able to have the choice of what kind of book to read. So here are a few of our biggest ebook readers to share what they like most about reading ebooks.
My name is Phoebe, and I like reading ebooks because sometimes a paper copy isn't available, but you can get the ebook. And it's easy to carry around a lot of books at once, no matter where you're going. I'm Kaya, and I like reading ebooks because you can get them from the school or public library no matter where you are, or even if you're on vacation. And if an ebook isn't available, you can get an email when it's ready to download. I'm Jay, and I like reading ebooks because you never have to worry about overdue books because they're returned automatically. And you never have to worry about losing or damaging the book. Hi, I'm Emma, and I like reading ebooks because if you come to a word that you cannot comprehend, you can click on it to see the definition and the correct pronunciation of the word. You can also bookmark as many pages as you desire. I'm Lily, and I like reading ebooks because it's easy to turn the page with just one click. You can also jump to any chapter in the book on the table of contents.
Great job, kids. Thanks. Not all students at Concord have embraced ebooks like these students have. However, we're pretty sure use of our Library in My Pocket website and Mac and via ebooks will continue to grow, and we look forward to watching that happen and continuing to develop the resource with new things in the coming years. Thank you.
And wanted to take a moment to see if you had any questions for staff or students. And I think we have some future maybe spelling bee champions here, given the, I like the vocabulary idea. That was good. So any questions or comments for our students or staff?
Do you tend to have more selection from ebooks than the actual printed books on the shelves?
Yeah, there tends to be a lot more ebooks in the library, on the computer or tablet or any place than there is in the printed copy on the library. I mean, yeah.
I think you mean that you can get the book more easily in the ebook collection because there aren't as many kids yet with e-readers, and so the books are more likely to be available in the ebook collection than on the shelf, where there are more kids using the resource, the books, the printed books, and longer waiting lists.
But do you have a wider, I mean, do you have more ebooks than you have actual?
No. We have.
They're the same. Okay.
Well, we only have 200 ebooks in our Mac and Via collection, and maybe 50 more in assorted other collections. So we have far fewer ebooks. We have hundreds and hundreds of print books.
How do you find a book you want to read? Do you go to your ebook collection knowing here's the title I'm looking for, or are there resources on Library in My Pocket to help you find a book?
On Library in My Pocket, there is, you can search by genres or grades or anything that you would like to do if you're just looking for a book and don't know what you're wanting to find yet.
You wanted to add something else?
Oh yes, I just wanted to point out that there is more room for ebooks in the collection because having actual paper books takes up more space in shelves.
Very valid point.
Any other questions for students? If not, thank you for having us here tonight to share a little bit about Library in Your Pocket at Concord Elementary School. Thanks.
Thank you all. Next up, I'm going to make a slight tweak to our agenda and allow Dr. Dressen to provide his leadership update, and that might provide some additional background for some of our speakers who are here tonight to share their thoughts. Thanks, Rick.
Good evening, board members and community members in attendance. I'm going to kind of play the coordinator of the report. We're talking on a variety of topics. We're gearing up for the 2014-15 year. We're wrapping up on a lot of work that we've done this year, and so this really is a summative report of our board agenda, so it'll give the board opportunity to have some discussion that we'll also be addressing later on in the meeting in a variety of discussion items. Our first area of discussion is around our budget planning, and I've got Margot Bach here, our Director of Business, who will provide an overview of that work. Again, here's the timeline that we work from for building our 2014-15 budget. It's built on very strong projections, model that's been very successful for us. So we actually start in December, and in January where the board learns of the projections built by the business department and some of the projections. We then set our established targets of what we're trying to reach so that we can be fiscally responsible, also continue to provide quality programming. February and March are times when this year our administrative team looked and explored how we could make our budget adjustments and our enhancements within that budget. February 17th, we presented some initial information to the school board. And then tonight is our first time where we'll be presenting the budget recommendations as it relates to the alignment work, both adjustments or reductions, revenue reallocations, and then some possible enhancement programming. March 17th is when the board would approve this concept and the work here, but the total budget is not approved by the school board until June 16th. I'll let Margot kind of take over and give you an overview of our budget work.
This is a chart that we look at often in Finance and Facilities Committee. It's where we started our work in December. We take a multi-year planning approach versus just 1 year to look at the long-range plan and see where we are financially and balancing revenues to expense. Historically, we've had a stable fund balance in Edina, which is good, fiscally responsible. We just want to look out in the future, planning balancing the revenues to expenditures so we avoid that trajectory, and making adjustments along the way on an annual basis certainly help that. The next chart shows there's just a red section over to the right and up on top that shows the revenue to expenditure gap, so to speak. If we carried that out to 15-16 and beyond, you would see that get a little bit wider. So we've taken, actually for a number of years here, we've taken a multi-year approach to the adjustments and continue to do that. We have a history of adjustments, as many districts do, in various categories: administration, direct instruction, revenue allocations, and instructional support. We try to keep away from that direct instruction, but we are 80% of our budget primarily goes to instruction or instructional support. But over that period of time, we have reduced $6.9 million in total of adjustments. And on an annual basis, just for reference, we have just under a $100 million budget. We have we've looked at several areas. If we made no adjustments this year, what would that do? Again, we're looking at a multi-year approach, but would we be able to sustain and maintain at that 8% fund balance? And then also looking at net adjustments of $500,000 or $750,000 and showing that impact if we make an adjustment in 14-15, how that helps us moving out to 15-16 and keeps those dollars at a more reasonable level in terms of what we need to adjust in 15-16, assuming all the assumptions stay the same in terms of enrollment and state aid, et cetera, et cetera. And so as we move forward with the plan we're presenting tonight, it's just a little over that $750,000 amount on an ongoing basis, and then there's some one-time funds out of fund balance, so we are using or spending down a little bit of the fund balance for one-time reasons.
So if there's no budget adjustment this year, we would be looking in 2015, 2016 in cutting $2 million in order to maintain the 8% fund balance. That's what that chart's telling us?
That's what that chart is telling us. Thank you.
And if I could insert a question here too on this similar topic with the information you just presented. I had a question by email from a community member this evening that summarizes a lot of, I think she wrote this question very well, asking if we could explain to the community why budget cuts are still needed and why is spending outpacing funding, especially in light of recent legislative funding. So it's the gap that you showed on there.
Yes, if we go back to that, so when we receive increases in state funding, which we very much appreciate, and we did in last legislative session, we received 1.5% in 13-14, and again we will in 1.5% in 14-15. That is on about 70% of our revenue budget. And so it's not, when we talk about 1.5%, that generates just a little over $500,000 for us on the new formula. 1% on expenditures is just under $1 million. And so that's where we constantly do have to balance our budgets, because the revenue coming in does not match the expenditure needs. And it is what districts have to do now. And it's commonly assumed that when the state does increase the funding, that it is on all of our revenues. And it is a significant portion of our revenue, but it is not all of them. And again, we very much appreciate that revenue. We targeted then initially different levels of adjustments, and starting at $250,000 and working our way up to $1 million. Again, we landed right around the $750,000 mark in terms of ongoing, and then some one-time dollars that we'll explain further here.
So we were looking both at reductions or new revenues or reallocation, but we're also looking at saying, are there some programming adjustments we need to make to enhance our work as we look at our strategic plans, we look at our mission. So we're looking both at alignment adjustments and enhancement adjustments. So we did have a task force. Task force was made up of elementary principals, secondary principals, district office administrators, again, seeking their input on this effort. A lot of the information that we had gathered over the years, because really there are only so many places you can go. And over the last 7 years, we've worked hard at trying to minimize any impact that we have to the classroom, and yet over the past years, we've seen class sizes grow. And we've tried to minimize impact to staff, because we know staff impact the learning. And so we've really tried to make our adjustments. And if you go back to one of those first graphs, you'll see that we really did try to keep the dollars away from where the instruction is occurring. As that task force went through the study, they were looking at a variety of ways of measuring, is this something we should bring forward? One is that we had to make sure we stayed in state federal laws as well as follow district policy. Are we supporting the mission and the strategic initiatives that we're driving forward for that success of all learners? Are we making sure we have quality programming? And then is this financially sustainable? So is the reduction that we're making sustainable? Is the new revenues going to be sustainable long term? Can we make sure that this will hold for us to be fiscally responsible?
So the budget adjustments generated through this process total a little over $1.1 million. And the ongoing enhancements, and as Dr. Dressen said, we had conversations about enhancements and reductions and aligning dollars. Those enhancements are a little over $260,000 for a net budget adjustment total of $859,000 to the general fund, and then additional one-time enhancements for the 14-15 year that would be taken out of fund balance of almost $460,000. So part of the general fund adjustments are revenue adjustments, so they do not impact a particular individual or program, their revenue generation. They were listed on that historical chart as a category that we look to try to identify areas of revenue. Third-party billing, we are seeing increases in that funding source. Also, we have a one card and a payment plus in terms of our accounts payable that we're seeing some additional revenues on those dividends. Usage of our tobacco settlement revenue, slight increase in our building fees, and then also increased student activity fees to the general fund. So 160,000 of, just a little over 160,000 of revenue generation. In terms of reallocation, we have higher than expected retirees this year, and we do realize some savings with hiring newer staff that is at a different pay scale or pay level than more senior staff, and so we're able to account for that in the adjustments. Also, media clerk expenses being transferred or reallocated, I should say, to the technology levy area. Also, our intermediate for special ed services, 287, some savings there. We have some students graduating out of program. And then a reallocation of strategic implementation dollars, where we had those dollars set aside in an ongoing fashion in the budget, and you will see that later in the enhancement side, that we're suggesting or recommending that be a one-time versus an ongoing budget item.
So some of the creative work we did was media clerks, and this was an area last year that we had to look at reductions, and we reduced those by 0.5, was that we wanted to sustain this program, but again, it was an area of support service that we were trying to figure out how could we continue to provide that. What we're able to do is take some of our technology levy dollars, again, those are targeted for technology, 150,000 of those dollars. We're going to be retraining our media clerk positions so that they will be able to respond to some of the technology needs in the schools, that we're going to continue to see very much what Concord presented tonight. We're going to continue to see that growing in all our schools, so we know that that media clerk position can be an asset to us if they grow their skill sets. We're going to, at the end of the year, then do an assessment to say, was it successful? Was this a good place to put this $150,000? But this is a refinement that we're doing through that process for our media clerk positions. So we're not making any changes in that 0.5 position for this year.
Additional reductions, and we had adjustments in revenue and realignments, and now these are reductions. We did discuss a 0.5% district-wide reduction in the cost centers or program areas, that everybody would take a 0.5% reduction. There's 0.5 teacher on special assignment reduction, elementary math science, paraprofessionals, and some special education staffing realignment. So there's an enhancement in special ed for some kindergarten staffing needs, and also a reduction for special education, and also realignment.
So again, drilling a little bit deeper on that 0.5, the task force decided that we would go district-wide, so district-wide by department, but because special ed was already taking a reduction, we didn't ask for them to go deeper, so they were not part of that 140,000. Elementary, again, because of our work with the recommendation to go forward with an elementary science and math para, we did not have them, but the middle school and the high school, that's where they had to make some adjustments with 0.5 FTE teacher at the middle school, and at the high school you can see again a reduction of 0.2 FTE, and then some other areas where they're saving some of their dollars. But again, it was across the board, both at a district-wide level, so within the district office, in some of the specific areas like our building and grounds and some areas like that, as well as by our program areas. The elementary math science para plan was an $86,000 savings. Again, it was looking at saying this is important work. We've been trying to hang on to this. This has been through the Berg process. It's been a position. These positions have been always something that we've tried to examine, tried to hold on to. We recognize it's important. We recognize the value it has on the science and the math programming. And in the problem solving, working with elementary principals, we started looking at how could we possibly do a reassignment, much like we've done this in the past year with our media position, and these are tough choices that we're trying to sort out. We've started looking at restructuring the day, using capital dollars in different ways, so we maybe have to buy more materials. That would be a one-time rather than an ongoing. Looking at volunteers, again, encouraging teachers in a teaming setting, maybe trying to find some efficiencies around that as well. But we know there has to be more problem solving, working with the teachers on how that could work. Special ed reassignment, maybe I'll ask Penny Kodrich to just share a little bit about some of the realignment work that we're doing in the special education arena.
In terms of some of the staffing changes, excuse me, we have taken some of the contracted money that we've used in the past for occupational therapists and certified occupational therapist assistants, and we were able to take that money and create a staff position that would become part of the regular staff in the district. We also have taken money that existed to create 2 positions, 1.5 position team leader facilitators at the high school, and at Southview it became really evident that we did not have the support we needed in those two settings. And then we have created some reductions in paraprofessionals that are across the district from early childhood special education through the high school, with no particular building taking a significant cut in that area, but is being shared across the district.
Thank you, Penny.
So now we're to the enhancements. The ongoing enhancements then would be kindergarten paraprofessionals, as I referred to earlier, special education, staffing to support the transition to the all-day K program into the general fund, which also relates to the kindergarten paraprofessionals, relates to that transition of all-day K into the general fund. Success centers and summer EL program, language translation services, and then Saturday school and the athletic supplies and equipment. Both of those are enhancements, but they also had funding sources. So we want to note those, that we are addressing those enhancements, but identified funding sources for both of those. So that's why you see $0 there in ongoing dollar amount. So ongoing enhancements of a little over $260,000.
Could you explain maybe a little bit more for our community about the change in kindergarten paraprofessionals now that we've moved to full day across the board rather than the way we had a full day paid program, fee-based program?
Last legislative session last spring, the state fully funded kindergarten programs, which was what we call a 0.4 increase in the revenue source. They partially funded because students were attending part of the day, and so we did receive an increase in funding for that. On the way it was offered before was through community services, that extra half day, because the state only funded half of the day, through a fee-based program where parents pay, and that funding source is actually greater than the additional 0.4 funding from the state. So we're transitioning, though, the program into the general fund and providing that service, and it will no longer be a fee-based program to parents, and all students will have the opportunity for that all-day programming.
So previously it was run through the community education program, and then they had established that at 24 there would be a 5-hour para, but if it was less than that, there were less hours. And so really our work is trying to align to that. Right now the numbers are looking that we are going to be not hitting that 24 number, that we're going to be more in that 19 to 22 range, and we're continuing to monitor changes on a regular basis. But we are going to try to support some para time, and again, it's going to take some more problem solving to say exactly how would this work. Our principals have been working on this. They'll be working more closely with our teachers going forward. Our teachers have been doing some planning around the programming. As the board is aware, we're adding 2 classrooms to make sure we have space, and we're equipping these classrooms, so they'll be very good. It was a big part of our strategic plan. We want to support with paraprofessionals as much as we can, and that's why we're bringing this $100,000 of new money onto the table.
And then to clarify, there's the reference, what I'm seeing on the slides is a total of $179,000 in kindergarten support, $79,000 dedicated to special ed at the kindergarten level. Was that accurate?
Yes, that was the
So that would be for special education students.
Special education students in the kindergarten setting. So there's support for.
So there'll be a variety of supports, as there always are. But
Correct.
As far as paraprofessionals, it's just 100,000.
But there are other 2 different types of supports
there's
joining
various
the classroom.
supports. That's correct.
That are planned for next year.
Yeah. And this is our first year into the all-day program, so we're going to have to say, how do our literacy specialists and our math specialists and some of the other people who have typically just served that 1 through 5 program, how do they reach down into the kindergarten? And so there's going to be a lot of learning going on in this first year, and we're going to be working very closely with other school districts who are in the same place we are, of trying to figure out what's the best way to serve something that's no longer fee-based, that is available to all students. It's really going to be a benefit, and how do we do that? So we know this is a time of good news, and yet we know we're going to get better as we walk into this a little bit deeper.
So if I understand this, the paras from last year were funded through the fee service.
Through the fee service, because all classes are 24, they had 5 hours. Had they had less than that, they would not have seen that many hours.
And that's not a fee, of course, that we can charge for next year.
No, it's not.
We have to rely upon the state funding, which doesn't give us enough to have that same level of para support, but we also don't have 24 students projected.
That's correct.
And we're adding the $100,000 enhancement to provide some additional support that the state is not providing.
That's correct. I might
But
ask,
we would not be allowed by state law to charge any type of fee to say, bring that para level in terms of hours back up to say level that we had it now at 24 students, right? I mean, then,
we can't charge families
right.
To attend school, but you know, if the board approves a fee structure, but again, that's a practice that the administration wouldn't be recommending. I know there's some elementary principals here with us, and I don't know if they have some comments to share about how that we might be looking at this paraprofessional work or the work that we're doing with the math and science, and so I think I saw a couple of them in the back. Rick Sandsted from Concord, Jerry Lakoska from Normandale Elementary, and Karen Bergman from Countryside. If just want to talk a little bit about the challenge, but also how you're going to try to respond to this challenge.
So I would agree this is a challenge. It's a new way. We do have, so all-day kindergarten for all kids, yet our funding sources are different, no longer community-based. I'm also a kindergarten parent next year as well at Countryside. Teddy's going to move on over to the big school. But we are going to need some creative problem solving. Part of this challenge, too, as this change occurs, is we've got really high-quality staff in a number of these current positions, and that makes it difficult because we have good people doing good work. And then to transition that is we need to be creative, and I think, like you said, we got to make sure that working with our teachers, we've got creative teachers. We have to figure that out together and figure out how we're going to staff and support learning in a way that we currently do, and knowing that it'll look different, but we're going to have to really work together and be creative around that. Managing our enrollment, which I know is also important in that as well, watching those numbers carefully, and those are going to be key pieces of the puzzle.
I think we would echo everything that Rick has said. One of the nice pieces of this puzzle is that we've done some very significant work with PLCs so that our teachers are now very skilled at working together and problem solving together cooperatively so that they can deliver the best instruction as a group. It's not just one single individual, that the teams are working together. So that's a strong foundation for this continued problem solving. I think that everybody understands that education is a fast-moving train, and that what we did in the past is not something that we can always continue to do in the future. So what I'm the most proud of is that the pace at which the staff is willing to learn to meet the needs of all learners.
Couple of other things that are already in place that we have talked about a lot, and how can we capitalize on what is already in place, would be the fact that we are all working in a system under response to instruction. We're taking a look at the data that we know about kids. Our teachers are experts at it. They are so very good at what they do. And how can we look at the needs of kids in a little bit different way? Is there a way that we can support them and the teachers in the classrooms as they're delivering that instruction? Is there training resources, things that we can bring to them to help them do that job in a little bit different way? One of the other pieces that's already in place in each of our buildings is the fact that we have reading and math specialists, and those folks are guiding us through some of that process of taking a look at how do we flexibly group kids together, how do we take a look at the information that we have about them and look at that differently. Currently, our reading specialists and math specialists are focusing more of their time in those 1st through 5th grades, and we need to take a look at how we can reallocate their time and focus more of their attention to those kindergartners. We know really well that our youngest students are the ones that are most fragile in those beginning years as far as acquisition of their reading skills and their math skills. So we're going to be taking a look at how we can restructure that at each of the buildings. We have 3 buildings who are currently right now Title I buildings identified as Title I. We currently have certified staff who are working with students under that program. And in moving forward, those of us that are Title I buildings can also utilize that resource in a little bit different way. Or are there ways that we can look at that a little differently to make sure that we're putting some extra time and attention to our kindergartners, and again, looking at it differently. Don't say it louder, say it differently, and try to figure out how else we can support them.
Thank you. So on the enhancement side, we've also identified a variety of one-time enhancements. So we've got the ongoing for $263,000, and about $459,000 is just some one-time dollars. Included in the one-time enhancements is a secondary intervention program where we're looking at providing more support at our secondary schools in the areas of math and reading. Some of the programming that's been successful for us in the past after school, we're using that. From the intervention side at the elementary level, we're expanding our G&T language arts program by 0.2 so that it grows that to a 0.4, and that means we'll be able to provide fidelity in our intervention programs all the way through from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in a much better level. And so we're pleased that we're able to bring that into play. And so when you again take a look at the numbers, we made recommendations of a little over $1 million of adjustments, both some revenues and some reallocations, but also some reductions. We've done some improvements, around $263,000 that will build into the budget, and then there's some one-time for $450,000. That being said, this is hard work, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I appreciate the work of the teachers and the parents and the commitment and the emails. This isn't fun. This is hard. What can we do? This is a model that's really tough because we are seeing that the revenues are not keeping up with the expenditures, and that's a national problem. It's a national problem of what level of funding can we provide education. And this community does a great job of supporting it because you give of your time and your talent, you give of your funds, you're always there when we need and we ask dollars, and we really appreciate that. And there are teachers and paras here today that are going to be impacted. We have 5 teachers who are going to be unrequested leave because we don't have positions for them for next year. And that's hard work. And we know that they're all valuable. They're all valuable. And yet we have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible. What can we do? We're going to have to be creative this year and going forward. That's very much about what our planning is around next generation, is how do we use our resources to maximize that learning for our young people. We can be calling our legislators and calling the governor's office right now because there are new dollars potentially on the line in this legislative session. Typically on the off year, we don't see that new funding. But if you want to do something today to help us for new revenue, it's to call that local representative and senator and the governor and ask for the support of the House bill that's around funding, because that will be able to help us. That will help us drive it forward. That's sustainable funding. And so that kind of is the overview of where we are tonight. We are going to, again, look deeper into this. We have a month to work on this. We'll bring it back to the board for more information, and then we'll bring the full budget, which we're required to present to the board in June. I mean, there are other things that are for consideration. The TOSAs would be, again, in that administrative management function, staff development. We could reduce that, but really a time when our teachers are needing all this training time and finding time for them. You know, fine arts is always an area that's, again, these are old ideas that have come forward. We need to look at different ways. Instructional class sizes, we've seen that growth, especially at our secondary level where we've really stayed focused on keeping the elementary numbers down, but our secondary, they continue to see this creep. And we have not increased class sizes at secondary for this year. Elementary specialists, these are all things that aren't good options. So as we do our next generation work, we don't want to be in this arena, and so we are going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to continue to problem solve as a community. But I do believe we can do that. So those are our next steps in the process. May 19th, we'll come back to the board after listening tonight and learning tonight, and then that task force, again, will do some more reflection. We'll be working much closer with our teachers going forward so that we can have a strong budget in June 16th later this school year. Thank you, Margot. Thank you, principals. I'm going to shift our conversation. You want me to keep going?
Yes.
Okay. We'll shift our conversation now to take a look at some of the other topics that you're going to be covering later in the evening. One is instructional class size. The change that we're making here is the programming due to the all-day, everyday kindergarten, that our desired kindergarten range is 18 to 22. We're also looking for support of 1.25 paras. So then if we would get to that 24 number, we'd be looking at adding additional time to support the classes. At this time, Mary, what's our numbers look like in kindergarten? Mary Manderfield oversees our enrollment.
Your mic's not on.
At this point in time, we have 558 students enrolled in kindergarten. In our present kindergarten class, we have 576. So when we look at the numbers, Concord, as an example, has 100 students for their 5 sections, so they'd be averaging 20. It would take an additional 19 students at Concord to get up to 24 in a class. Because again, we went from some half-day and all-day to all-day, every day. Cornelia and Countryside have more, 23. Highlands has 21, 21, 22, and 22. Creek Valley is 19 in every section. So that would take, for Creek Valley to get up to 24, they would have to have 20 new students enroll in kindergarten. And Normandale is at 109. And Normandale, so theirs is about a 21-to-8 ratio. And the reason Normandale is lower is their first grade ratio is 27-to-1. So we have 5 sections of kindergarten in 5 sections of kindergarten that feed then into 4 sections of 4th grade, 4 sections of 1st grade, which are 27 to a class. So right now, we are below last year by approximately, below this year's numbers by about 21 students. And numbers change. Weekly, we get students that are doing holdbacks. We have a number of students that have summer birthdays. We have students that are enrolling. We have students that are choosing a different avenue than Edina Public Schools. So the numbers, 558, are a little higher than they were probably 2 weeks ago, but they've been pretty consistent. And so that is where we're at the kindergarten number.
Great.
Mary and Rick, as we continue to discuss the situation with para support in the classroom, and I think that, you know, the thing that confounds us, which you've discussed, is that we went from a model where we were charging in our district to a model where now the state is paying for it. And when the state makes a law that blankets the entire state, it, you know, there can be unintended consequences in a district that, you know, may be doing things well the way they were doing it. But as I was looking at the numbers, Mary, that you've been discussing, I've just been mulling over in my mind the information that Rick provided us, which was how we base the hours of para time in all of our kindergarten classrooms. And as Rick said, when we could have it at 24, we could afford the 5 hours of para. But then we did pare down from that. If it was 23, there was fewer hours, 22, 21, and down. And I just think that some of the creative ways that we may have to look at that is to look at those guidelines and think about, you know, when we have a classroom where we only have registration of 19, we may not be able to have a standard across all classrooms that is maybe, you know, the magical number of 1.25 hours, that we have to provide extra support in a classroom where we've gone up to 23 kids. And we need to maybe look at how we can balance this based on individual enrollment in individual schools and take those dollars that we're looking to put towards this and figure out how to balance that better. Because I do think we need to be creative with this, and when kindergarten teachers are challenged with 19 kids versus 23, that can make a huge difference, and then the needs of those individual students in that room. And I would hope that as we move forward on this, we can maybe talk about some of those things and how we're coming up with those dollars to fund that.
Great. I'd agree. Secondary level on class sizes, you can, again, we've not made a change. This is a staffing factor, so these are just a number of staff for that many students. Doesn't necessarily speak to class size, because that class size could be smaller, it could be larger, but that's how we staff that. Then we have a variety of other programs that we also have ratios on. These are some of our specialized programs, many of them in special education. And again, these numbers have stayed consistent, but it helps us in our planning efforts. Teacher contract, the board later tonight will be voting on a 2-year teacher contract. It's been a long journey, and I'd ask Gwen Jackson to talk a little bit about this 2-year agreement that was approved by the teachers group last week. Gwen, was it?
Yes, they voted in favor of the contract of about 70%. And I would say the largest highlight was the fact that for many years we have been working to look at a different salary schedule for our teachers, and this time there was agreement that we would move to a new salary schedule beginning in 2016. And for the next 2 years, teachers will have the option of remaining on the current salary schedule or moving to the new one. The overall package, as it shows on there, is 6.4%, which includes a 1% increase in year 1, which is this current year, and a 1% increase next year for teachers. And then for health insurance, they receive a 0.5 increase as of January 1st of this year, and 3% increase for health and medical needs for 2015, January of 2015.
Gwen, can you just share the total cost of beyond the 6.4%?
Surely. The total cost is,
Yeah.
4.6 million over 2 years. Total cost.
And just so people understand, when you have 1 and 1, it's really loud, to get to 6.4, there are other costs that are built in. Maybe you can just do a quick overview of that.
Leny, I apologize, but could you repeat your question? Because we were switching the microphones.
So we've got 1% in year 1, 1% in year 2. 1 and 1 is 2, not 6.4. I do understand how you get to 6.4, but maybe you can give a quick explanation as to why 6.4 is the total cost rather than 2.
So within a can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. So within the contract total package of 6.4%, it includes things like Social Security and FICA costs. It also includes step movement and assumptions for lane changes, which we do have staff that want to continue educating themselves, which is certainly a good thing. Any language items that have additional cost to them, the extra pay parts of the schedule. So it really encompasses anything in the contract with a cost.
And the board will be voting for action on that later tonight. I want to talk a little bit about our next generation work of our strategic planning. This is starting to move more quickly. We've got some strategic work where it's a comprehensive look across the board. We're looking at our birth through 5 study as well as our 6 through 12 program study. And next year we'll be looking at doing a community education study. So when we look at our planning efforts, the secondary study is in its 2nd year of implementation, and it is moving along. There will be some more formal recommendations coming to the board tonight for discussion and then action in May. The Birth Through 5 study will be coming forward with discussion in May and action in June. Again, a journey of looking at how we can get the best ideas at an international level and bring them back with input from our communities to grow both our grade 6 through 12 program as well as our birth through grade 5 program. These are some of the deadlines that we're looking at when it comes to strategic recommendations at a district level. We'll be talking tonight about educational competencies. We'll continue to grow that. That's a key piece of our strategic work that Randy will be talking about. We're talking also at the secondary level with a phase 1 set of recommendations that we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be bringing in a phase 2 set of recommendations on May 19th, and then June 16th we'll be seeking board approval for the implementation of the work that we're doing around that study. The birth through grade 5 will bring a framework of discussion in May, and then June for action. When we look at educational competencies, I'm going to ask Randy Smoslow to talk a little bit about that, if he could.
Throughout the work last year with our secondary study, through the survey with staff and the community, conversations with students, evaluating the research, looking at national schools and international schools, we took a new look at what is it that we expect the next generation of Edina Public School learners to be about. What does their profile look like as learners when they leave our system? These 6 areas represent, and I know that they may be hard to read on the slides, so I'll just read through these very quickly. Global competency as a skill set, effective communication and collaboration skills. These are the general categories. Innovative thinking and creation, responsible and engaged citizens, motivated lifelong learners, and a well-rounded person that understands balance in their lifestyle. These 6 categories are a high-level view, and we have some more detailed breakout of what these actually mean, but these represent the areas of competencies that we will expect our learners to achieve as a result of attending Edina Public Schools.
So the board will be discussing this later tonight. I'm going to hit the pause button before we go further with our birth through 5 study or our secondary study, and I think we're going to move to public comment, and then we'll come back with the finish of this report, and as well as our math presentation.
Thanks, Rick. Apologize for the delay, folks. Sort of a busy meeting tonight, but we appreciate your patience. Several members of the audience have asked to speak this evening. We ask that you keep in mind that your presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We ask that you avoid redundancy, and also that you abide by policy 206. There'll be no board discussion, but we will follow up with you after the meeting. And we thank you for sharing your input. First up, we have Maddie Schnell, Michael Dunn, and Paul Thompson, who are here to share about the Edina Environmental Forum.
Thank you. Unfortunately,
You're on.
we lost our star speakers we didn't know that there would be that long of a delay. So you are, too bad you couldn't meet Maddie and Michael. They're 5th grade students at Cornelia, and they will be 2 of the presenters next Monday night at Southview Elementary School, or at Southview Middle School. They'll be talking about their paperless project that they did at Cornelia. And they have a wonderful Google Drive presentation. They're very excited to be presenting to the community. So this is part of the Edina Energy Forum that will be in its 3rd year, sponsored by the Energy Commission. We'll also have high school students talking about their solar panel project to power their cell phones and devices that they now all have. And the theme is what will turn you on in 2030, powering our energy future. So in 2030, I'll be 81. I hope I'll finally be able to be fully in retirement and seeing solar panels all over Edina and having Edina be the leader that it always is in sports and education and now in building a sustainable future. So we invite all of you to come. 6 o'clock, there'll be a resource fair with 12 groups. They're all Edina based. And then we'll have wonderful food. We'll have music by students. And all of the speakers are young people, except for Michael Noble from Fresh Energy. So you have it in your packet. We invite you to come. I know there are other things, and we're busy, but this is an important issue. And we thank you very much for the work that you're doing to make Edina a leader in sustainability. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
We will also have 3 electric vehicles. And if you ride your bike, we have valet bike parking. And door prizes.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jenny, followed by Shannon. Jenny Chapman, she's here to talk about science paraprofessionals. Welcome.
Thank you. You guys can sit there. First, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to address the board this evening. And first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Chapman. I am a mother of 5. I have 4 children with me this evening. I currently have 3 children at Valley View Middle School and 2 at Creek Valley. And while I'm here to talk tonight about the science paraprofessionals, I'm also speaking about the paraprofessionals in general. I don't think it's a debate that anyone on the board or here this evening does not think that they're of value. So that's not what my point is. My point is essentially to speak how invaluable our science paraprofessionals are and how they cannot be replaced with school administratives, staff, and parent volunteers. And I'm sure you all are aware, back in 2009, the White House pushed a campaign called Educate to Innovate. And basically it's pushing schools around the nation to do science, technology, engineering, and math education. And how do we ignite that passion in students? I say in the early years. We can't just do it in middle school and high school. So we need to have those math labs and those science labs really at an early age. So my question is, if we get rid of the science paraprofessionals and we place them with administrative clerks, which is one offering, I believe, in addition to possibly having parent volunteers, I don't think that they can possibly do that job justice whatsoever. I have copies here for you this evening, which I will give to Sarah if you'd like to look at them. But the job of one paraprofessional serves 50 teachers at 2 different schools, assembles all the materials, serves over 1,000 students. And while I understand budgets are incredibly difficult to manage, and I appreciate all the work that you do on that, it's $86,000 for all of our elementary schools. One paraprofessional makes $21,000 and serves over 1,000 students. So while we may be adding $350,000 in the proposed budget for additional gifted and talented resources, this science paraprofessional is serving 1,000 students, and that's reaching every student, not a small percentage of students, every student. So that is my strong urging this evening, is that we take that into consideration when trying to service all students of Edina, not just a small percentage of them. In addition to that, they prepare science materials for over 4,400 science projects. Every kit, she copies all materials for science notebooks, raises the fish, beetles, iPods, purchases the squid. I'm quite certain a parent volunteer would not be willing to do that. Order materials, picks up all the materials, brings the parent volunteers
Jennifer,
in.
your time's
1
up.
minute?
Please wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much. Abundance more that I cannot and do not have the time to go over, but I will leave this with you this evening. I did bring my children in to say something really quickly, and I will wrap it up by saying I will leave a copy of a petition that was just started over 12 hours ago, and in that 12 hours, we only have 98 signatures in the mere 12 hours that we had. However, I've gotten a lot more interest, and I'd like to keep that open with your permission. Real quickly, here's my daughter, who is a second grader at Creek Valley.
Just a few seconds here. We're way beyond time.
I like science because it's fun, and my favorite thing I did there was for Mother's Day we got to make plants for her.
I like doing the science lab because we had a squid dissection. And it was really fun, and I'm in 3rd grade.
I have 2 other sons here, but there's not enough time. Thank you for addressing the board or letting me do that this evening. I know you have a big decision on your hand, but I urge you to reconsider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Shannon Murphy Robinson. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you to the school board for giving me this opportunity to address you. As a parent and as a community member, I'm here to express my concerns around the para cuts. I have 3 daughters that are in this district, and 2 of them will be directly affected by this cut. One that gets math and science help, and the other it's in special ed. And when I see 10 special ed cuts across the board, I see the special help. What we're talking about for next generation is how do we set up all learners for success? I live in this district because of the tradition of success. We started this meeting celebrating academic and athletic success. These cuts are going to be counterproductive. Research shows that the more we can do in the early grades, especially for those children who need it the most, which includes 2 of my daughters, the more it sets them up on that lifelong trajectory of success. This cut will directly undermine that. Not only that, but I also believe it's going to cost the district more in the end. When they get into middle school, when they get into high school, the complexity, the demands, the skills that they're going to need to have in place to be successful in those environments begin in elementary school. They begin in early childhood. So I'm very worried about this cut. And I also know this district. I know the brilliant brains that are part of this district. And if we can come together with some of that collective wisdom, some of that collective brilliance, and figure out other options, that doesn't undercut a trajectory of success for all learners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Chris Tower, followed by Mike Hammer.
Thank you. Thank you for giving the teachers of Edina this opportunity. I'm here not just in support of the science paraprofessionals, but all paraprofessionals, although I'm going to focus on science a little bit more. I'm going to share something I heard about erosion in my science class the other day, and this girl said, "Oh, Mr. Tower, now I get it. That's how erosion works. I've always heard about it, seen about it, read about it, but now I understand how it works." Where does all the soil go in the erosion? This student led the inquiry. This is a typical inquiry that happens every day. FOSS Science is an inquiry hands-on based science program. That question was formulated from and through the FOSS Landforms Science Kit, which included a tray with premixed sand and clay, water, wooden angle, 1 liter, a basin, 2 Hanslons, meter, tape, 2 water pitchers, a poster, a map, towels, newspaper, broom and a dustpan, a vacuum, 3 student data sheets, and duct tape. And that was just for one group. The science para allows for this type of activity and student thinking to occur. And while making sure it all tied to our state standards, like the surface of the earth changes, some changes are due to slow processes, and some changes are due to rapid processes. I'm going to share a few concerns of my colleagues and some of the parents. Just the other day, there was a Twitter announcement out that Edina Schools, congratulations to us, is rated #1 in Minnesota and top nationally by U.S. News and World Report. This is from a parent. So please explain to me why it would make sense to eliminate science and math program that has been part of the curriculum for 18 years. This is a large part of why Edina Schools has been so highly rated, as was just previously stated. This happened because the FOSS full option science system and engineering is elementary curriculum is an inquiry-based program that focuses on engaging students in active learning through hands-on experiences. And the need to collaborate, think critically and creatively, and communicate with each other. All of this type of learning requires time, experience, knowledge, and organization of materials and science equipment. And that is what a para provides to us, so we can assure Edina stays rated at the top. And again, we do not want our success to erode. Here's a quote from a recent memo sent to teachers and parents. We, meaning the district, are looking at a combination of ways of redistributing the responsibilities of this position to include assigning to other support positions in the building, utilizing parents, as was previously stated. In response to this, I'm going to paraphrase. Each year, the special education department has faced multiple years of professional cuts. These cuts increase our workload, decreases our ability to work with professional staff, and decreases the quality of programming, not only for special education students, but for the students in their class. Due to these repeated cuts, we have been forced to cluster more students together, decrease the amount of support given to some students. This increases not only our workload, but the workload of the classroom teacher as well. The science para position is tangible, accessible example of the work that is missed when a paraprofessional positions are cut. History seems it will repeat itself. Money's the obvious issue. If that's
Chris,
the case,
out of time.
okay, just
Please
going to
wrap.
wrap up. How many are here in support of the paraprofessionals today? Teachers. How many are parents? Okay. We're asking you not to water down our science program, not to let it erode or end up downstream. The science paraprofessional position is crucial to our success. Last year, I was fortunate to receive the National Science Teachers Award for elementary teachers. That could not have happened without support from a paraprofessional. That's the standard Edina achieves. That's just the standard Edina is going for. Thank you.
Next up is Mike Hammer, followed by Winnie.
Well, board and parents, teachers, I'm a parent.
Mike, you can grab the mic. There you are. Thanks.
I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Highlands Elementary, and I just received some information regarding the reduction, I guess, in the budget and the paraprofessionals. My daughter really enjoys her time here at Highlands, and especially does love her second teacher. And I believe it's the best interest of the kids to keep that second teacher. I guess before kindergarten, she went to Morningside preschool, and I think there was about one teacher per about 10, 12 kids. And she also went to a little in-house daycare, which again was probably about one teacher per 10 to 12 kids. And I think the state law at that level is about around that, about one teacher per dozen kids. And now in kindergarten, you go from that to almost double, which seems kind of odd that Edina is known for education. People move to Edina because of that. And it seems like we're wanting to take a step backwards. I don't think that's a very good idea. And so I just want to, I guess, show my support for keeping paraprofessionals in the kindergarten classes. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Next up, Winnie Martin. Welcome, Winnie.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
My name is Winnie Martin. I'm a parent of two at Concord Elementary, and I'm here to voice concerns over the proposed elimination of the math and science para positions, in addition to the other para positions at all Edina elementary schools. Ironically, today, Superintendent Dressen tweeted that EPS High School was rated #1 in Minnesota by U.S. News and World Report. It is because of vital positions, such as the science and math para, that allows our community this type of success. We all understand that it is a financial decision to eliminate staff positions. As quoted by several board members I've spoken with, and even our own principal, staff is the greatest cost in our EPS budget. But let none of us disregard the fact that staff at EPS is our greatest asset in the system. Our Concord Science and Math para position has been held by an individual for 18 years. The Concord Science Math para position exemplifies what a science and math curriculum coordinator should be at each and every Edina elementary school. Some of the duties include multiple service learning projects, mealworms and butterfly hatchings, full curriculum coordination and implementation of seedling and garden plantings for our outdoor learning centers, rain gardens and Concord Community Produce Gardens, annual staff EFN food drive coordinator, Earth Day champion, water filtration specialist. I could go on and on, but we know I have 3 minutes. Concord's coordinator works with each teacher individually and sets the hands-on experiment calendar. She transfers all supplies and equipment from room to room, grade to grade, thus maximizing exposure for the classrooms and minimizing the cost for the district. She coordinates the math curriculum calendar and the sharing of math manipulatives within and between grades. She prepares order forms for science and math materials for the upcoming school year, as well as special orders for needed supplies. This position represents a full-time science and math professional to each teacher within the school, even though it is a part-time position. This position teaches kids from every grade, every single day. This position greatly impacts every child in subjects that are crucial and integral in parts of tomorrow's job world. If this position is eliminated, it is grossly evident that EPS kids of today will not be prepared for tomorrow. The district will inevitably spend more dollars, thousands more dollars, per each elementary school purchasing more supplies. Without the facilitation of a science and math curriculum coordinator, the children will be exposed to less science and math, and there will not be a coordinator to navigate the curriculums as well as the size and the demands of multiple experiments. This is why we, the parents of this district, boldly ask that the board closely look before you cut 6 part-time math science positions. For $86,000, you can't afford not to. Thank you.
Last speaker is Erica Ellenberg. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. My name is Erica Allenberg, and I have 3 children in the district ranging from kindergarten to grade 9, and I am co-president of the Creek Valley PTA. When my stepson James started at Creek Valley in 2004, there was a program called Bravo Music, a foreign language program, a media center specialist there every day, and more para help in the classroom. Sadly, none of that is there now. Now the district wants to cut science paras and reduce special education and kindergarten para time, which means that gradually over time, the educational experience received in our elementary schools has been greatly diminished. I do not argue that there is a budget deficit and tough cuts have to be made. I get the pressures being put on our school districts today. But I feel our district has done a very poor job of looking into ways to raise revenue. Do you know that schools like Minnetonka charge a $75 activity fee on charge of registration fees for things such as band, debate, sports, and drama, and Wayzata charges $25? Do you know that schools like New Trier, which we like to compare ourselves to, charge a $110 registration fee and an $80 activity fee? Maybe raising our athletic fees $50 is not enough. Have you asked parents out there if they're willing to pay a $20 science fee to cover the meager wages we pay our science paraprofessionals? How can we as a district sit and over again cut programs and people that touch our kids every single day without challenging ourselves to be more creative financially? I also feel our district is prioritizing the needs of small groups of students over the greater good of all. How can this district justify adding $350,000 to the budget to enhance gifted reading, which touch a mere 3 to 6% of the student body who already receive special services, and 2 of which are mine, so I do not have a myopic view on this, while cutting something like science and math paras at a cost of $86,000, which touch every student, in addition to kindergarten paras, which touch every student at such a critical point in their education. I take exception to the fact that every time I see a bullet on cutting human resources, one of the answers is to engage volunteers. I can tell you from the perspective of a volunteer and the PTA president of Creek Valley, we have reached a point of critical saturation from a volunteer perspective. We cannot get enough volunteers to staff the events and programs we already have. This cannot continue to be the continual answer to cutting resources. The assumption that parent volunteers can and will do the job of a para shows a current lack of appreciation for the work the paras do now and is stressing our current volunteer system. When I told my daughter, who is a kindergartner, that her current para, Mrs. Liz Rosenthal, will no longer be at Creek Valley, she said, "But why, Mommy? She has helped me so much this year." And I want each and every one of you to know that these paras are not line items and they're not difficult budgetary decisions. Our science para, Marlis Brandlin, had her science supply budget cut a few years back. I want you to know that she personally digs up worms from her yard, snails, catches isopods, and keeps them in aquariums in her house all year, so our kids can have the best science samples possible. She drives to grocery stores to get squid. These are the people our district should be thanking, not getting rid of. I challenge you as a board to say to the district, this budget is not acceptable. Be more creative. We are Edina. We can and we should do better than this.
Thank you all. We're off to math instruction update.
And we will be discussing all of these agenda items during the discussion portion of the agenda.
Correct.
It's worth pointing out.
We don't want to skip the discussion.
You might.
Folks, before you all take off, we will be discussing these items as a part of our action, our discussion items this evening and towards the end of the meeting. So, thank you all.
Good evening, Chair Meyer, Superintendent Dressen, School Board, and community members. My name is Randy Smousel. I'm Director of Teaching and Learning. I'm joined here this evening with Scott Wilbur, who works on K-12 math, and Toy Harder, who is a learning specialist from Highland Elementary. We're just going to talk to you for a few minutes to give you an update on some things happening in math instruction across our district. In the past few years, through our ADSIS state grant funding and district contributions, we have put resources in place to support math and learning at the elementary level. RTI, Response to Instruction, is our intervention framework in our school district. And through that intervention framework, it is designed to incorporate support for learners who need additional time, as well as learners who need something different, which might be a different pace or a different curriculum. Learning specialists are a support structure for those students who need additional time. We've had learning specialists in place for nearly 2 years, and we have 1 learning specialist per building. And the main role of the learning specialist is to help support a huge factor in learning, which is guaranteed and viable curriculum. The guaranteed and viable curriculum is really about students learning the big ideas and the standards, mastering those through common assessments, and our learning specialists help track that learning throughout the year. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Toy Harder to describe her role and give you a little bit more information about what she does and what it looks like.
Sure, thanks. Okay, my role as math specialist, and those in the other buildings as well, provide evidence-based intervention of math instruction during the school day to qualifying students in grades 1 through 5. That happens either in the classroom or in additional time outside of the classroom. We do have a curriculum of our own in addition to the one that's happening in the Tier 1 classroom. It's a great curriculum because we know that struggling students benefit from a multiple model approach to learning, and this curriculum does that. It provides concrete, pictorial, and abstract learning progressions through heavy use with manipulatives. Just to be a little bit more specific, that's a gradual approach, starting with those things that you can handle, very literal, to drawing pictures of them, and then finally representing them as using numbers and symbols and operations. It is engaging and it involves learning through games and math through curricular connections with children's literature, which you'll see a little bit more of those two things coming up here. Do the Math curriculum provides meaningful practice. It provides foundations of understanding in the numbers and operations standards primarily. It provides small groups with opportunities for more intentional and personalized instruction, which is important as well. We know that no two children are alike. The small groups allow us to continue to access what students already know and therefore how we can meet their diverse learning needs. Next, in addition, we also use Ames Web. In addition to our Do the Math curriculum, Ames Web is an online progress monitoring tool. Each student we service has an account that's created and managed by us. We give them regular probes, they are called, which are basically time tests, 8-minute time tests of varying operations and varying degrees of difficulty at each grade level. The information is put in online and then you get uploaded a nice chart such as this that's easy to share with teachers to see a visual of the students' progression and progress. And here's a little clip. I could sit and tell you all about the details of what we do, but I think this clip sort of sums up what we do, and you can see that most importantly, students are feeling supported, they are feeling successful, and they are enjoying what the math specialists are doing in each building. So here's a little peek at that.
It's improving my math because at the beginning of the year, my math wasn't really good and needed help. And then when I came to this class, I think my math is improving a lot. It's fun. I get it. There's 2 other people that come down with me. The math games that are like Uncover, Cover Up, and all those other games.
Good. And if you were to describe our class to another student or a parent, or maybe a different teacher, how would you describe our class?
A fun, loving little classroom that makes me feel like I belong here. And there's like no put downs in here. So it's just joy and happiness.
Thanks. Bella, can you tell us something about what we're practicing in this game?
We're practicing to find equal fractions. Like, if you cut 1/4 in half, you get 1/8 because 4 goes in the 8 2 times.
Good job.
I like coming here because I get to play games and I get to get on the computer, and I like taking the tests here too.
Oh.
I like playing games down here and stuff, but it's not just all about playing games, it's about math.
Good.
Sometimes I'm not good at math.
No, you are good at math. Everyone needs time to think about it. Okay. So.
What did I do? When we do more math, it gets stuck in our brain, which is good. So, like when we have a test, we know it right away.
Good. Will, do you want to add to that? How do you think it might help you?
I think it's really helping me because before I came into this class, I was really stuck on math, and this class helped me out a lot, and now I'm not behind. I love playing the games, accomplish a lot of stuff, and I like when I get an answer right, and I'm just happy. We do lots of fun math, and it really helps kids out by helping them keep track in math and don't be lost. What I did at math is we were learning multiplication between division, we were learning fraction and decimals, and I got help sometimes, and I sometimes do it myself, and it just makes me happy.
Oh, sure. I have to follow the kids now. So I want to highlight just a couple of the evidence-based instructional practices that we have put in place with this program, which is directly tied to our response to instruction program that the principals referenced earlier. We've really built this to make sure that what we're doing with these students is evidence-based in terms of materials and instructional practices. So targeted direct intervention instruction, a key component to intervention is that you personalize learning for the students and make sure that the students are very clear about what they're supposed to learn that day in that small group. You saw in the examples here some meaningful practice. The fraction example is an example of meaningful practice and also playing the game with the tic-tac-toe. Vocabulary is critical for some kids that they just need to have very specific focus on the words, and sometimes that's why they're falling behind. They don't know all the words. Verbalization, the more that students can verbalize their understanding to the teacher, the better it sticks in their brain. You heard him say it. Manipulatives are worked with heavily. Conceptual understanding is emphasized, as well as guided practice, and we're working to develop problem-solving models that students can carry over multiple grade levels. More of that kind of is happening next year. A data piece with this is a nice example of one slice of the data. In 11-12, we didn't have learning specialists in place like we do now. And to clarify the numbers on here, the percentage you see there, 38%. This is starting with a group of kids that were below the 40th percentile on their fall math scores. So there's a group of kids that are below the 40th percentile. In the 11-12 school year, 38% of those kids moved to above the 40th percentile by the spring. And then we started with math learning specialists, and there was a big increase in the 12-13 school year where we had learning specialists in place for most of the year. So I'm going to say it again. We start with the kids that are below the 40th percentile on MAP in the fall. That's one of our primary qualifying criteria. Of that group of students, 64% were above the 40th percentile when we tested again in the spring. So that's one broad sweep about how we're having an impact on student learning with this program.
So the kids that are targeted for this program are the kids who are below the 40th percentile to start with?
That's the primary qualifying criteria. We have a couple other things in place, and that was the metric for this slide.
Okay. So then after having them in place for part of a year, you were able to move 64% of them out within a year?
That's right.
So 64% of the 38.
64%? No, that's different years.
Different years.
If we look at the 12-13 school year, of the group that was below the 40th percentile, 60% of that group were above the 40th in the spring. And before the math learning specialist, it was only 38%. So we've doubled the group of at-risk kids that have moved out, that sort of graduate from intervention.
Because of the intervention. Yeah.
Because of the intervention. That's right. Because it sticks in their brain.
And again, that
And they're happy.
and that was not having a full year of intervention versus this year. Now you've got it going from September.
That's right.
Right, because that's last year's data.
That's right.
We don't even have
And it was
13,
late
14.
fall when they really got started.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those were Highlands kids, weren't they? I thought so.
And just next steps with this, what's happening in place right now as a core component of our PLC work is common assessments based on power standards in elementary mathematics. It's been a big push this year. We've selected our power standards, and we also have an assessment tool in place. So a big component of this next year is Tier 1 assessment on power standards to even better inform Toy what she needs to do with those kids in the precious time that she sees them. And then we're also doing some work this summer to build instructional resources directly tied to those benchmarks, to those power standards.
Randy, can you just remind the community what power standards are? Because we throw that term around a lot, and make sure that everybody understands what that means.
So power standards are really the big ideas in the curriculum, and they represent the standards that have the most endurance or are longest lasting ideas for kids. They represent the ideas that apply to other courses or other areas, and so they have leverage for student learning in other content areas, or they are standards or big ideas that provide readiness for children so that they are best prepared for that next level of mathematics. Those are three prime criteria: the leverage, the readiness, those elements are prime criteria for what a power standard would consist of. So at this time, any other questions or comments by the board?
I just want, so this curriculum is in addition to the everyday math, not supplanting the everyday math. That's correct.
Additional questions?
It's great.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the late night. Dr. Dressen's going to follow up 2 additional topics he wanted to touch on in his leadership report that we've pushed back earlier, and then we'll go on to consent agenda.
So again, just want to give a brief update on where we are with our birth through grade 5 study. But this is all going to start rolling forward, and it's a lot of information, and want the board and the community to be aware of this first year of the study that we've been working hard since this fall. December, January, that's when we started doing our first round of surveying, doing a lot of the internal research, external research, gathering more information. We're starting to identify options. March and April, we went back out and gathered more information. We had community meetings, and we're at a point now where we're starting to gather that data, make some refinements so that we can bring recommendations to the board in May, and then would have the board take action in June. I'm going to ask Gwen and Randy, who are kind of key players in this work, just to talk briefly about some of the options that are starting to evolve that will get refined much more over the next weeks, and then be brought to the board for discussion in May.
Sure. So I will speak a little bit about structure, and Randy maybe can talk about program.
I don't think your mic is working.
I'll try to speak up a little bit louder.
There
we go.
Now you got it.
So regarding the structure, one of the things that we have done is taken a look at other programs that have, where schools have done some different things with their furniture. They've purchased other furniture, newer furniture, other than the furniture we have been using since it was designed in the late 60s or even the late 50s. And it allows schools to do, or classroom teachers to do other things with the students regarding small group sessions. Some of our schools that we have visited, they have done other things with the space, such as glass walls, and provided large spaces for as many as 100 students and a group of teachers to work with students either in small group or large group. So there's more flexibility. So those are some of the things we have been looking at. We also asked for input from our staff as well as our community and parents about the flexible calendar and schedules. We have been using the same type of calendar for many years, and are there some other options that we can do, such as year-round school or just a variety of other things? So we're gathering information from that. Another thing we are looking at, there are several things, but one of the things we're looking at also is looping, which allows a team of teachers to move with the students. So first grade team would then move with the students to second grade and then loop back around to first grade the following year. So those are just some of the ideas that we have looked at with structure. And as Rick said, next month we will come back with the information that we are looking at this point.
As I was describing earlier, in terms of the profile of the learner of the future and this whole concept of global competency, a question comes out of, well, what does global competency look like if you're in first grade? What does global competency look like if you're in fourth grade? And so one of the things that we're trying to do through this study is identify some of those elements at the early childhood level or at the elementary level and determine what they look like. And it could be that one of those elements is about language programming. So what does language programming for next generation look like at the elementary level? So one of our discussions that we're having. In terms of additional choice programs that people have expressed interest in at least pursuing or investigating, STEM programs or STEAM programs, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Add an A in there for the arts, or immersion programming. Should we look at additional immersion programming or additional languages immersion? Those are questions that we've been exploring through the program conversations with staff and community and through the surveys. One of the options is around putting the pre-K program at the elementary sites so that we can attack that gap that can be created through lack of opportunity at an earlier age. Certainly, integrating more physical movement for students in the day is very well supported from neuroscience research. We've received a lot of positive feedback around that particular recommendation thus far, and that's really about priming the brain for learning and getting it ready to go. Certainly, promoting use of technology has been a popular discussion. We just had a conversation with a kindergarten teacher about flipping the learning experience in K, flipping it in kindergarten, so the teacher can team teach with themselves in that classroom. Integrating curriculum, looking at other ways that we can help kids make connections across curricular areas, and certainly anytime that we can increase leadership opportunities for students, that's an important piece to also look at. So those have been the program conversations that we've been having. We still have to collect the feedback from community and process. We have collected, we need to process it, and then we're very close to narrowing down the choices and the recommendations.
Thank you, Randy and Gwen. Questions of them on the birth through 5? You'll be hearing more about it in May. I want to welcome at this time Susan Tennyson. Susan is our strategic data coordinator and analysis analyst. Does a lot of the work that we've been doing. She's got an extensive background both at in a variety of settings here in Minnesota, but also internationally. And so we've been very fortunate to have her join our team, and she's been very instrumental in moving forward with the work around our secondary study. We are bringing this forward in a variety of phases because this is big ideas, and so we have to roll it out in that fashion. And so the board later tonight will be taking a look at our action plan, and you'll continue to see that'll be an active action plan that we'll be talking about, of taking these 15 initiatives that the board approved last June, that we're now moving them into motion. We've had an implementation team that included 6 teachers and district administrators, as well as building principals. Susan was on that team, and I was the facilitator. So I just kind of facilitated and made sure everything was moving along. They have been focused on 15 areas of action, which are described very thoroughly in the board packet tonight. We want to highlight just a few things about that as we move forward in the second year. But as they moved into the year, they did their work around that first phase of once they got the recommendations, the team went back out and did more data research, much like the design process talks about. They had narrowed the field, so we went very specific on some of the targeted areas, made contacts with school districts throughout the world, did some site visits in various locations in the upper Midwest, did some live chats with school districts throughout the United States as well as internationally. Then we started narrowing those options and started narrowing the ideas in January and March, went back out to the community and staff to get more idea throughout the process, and are starting to bring those recommendations forward. Again, it's a phased process. The board and their packets and that will be available online. You can see the phased approach. You can see how we have this alignment, so it has to be phased because we're aligning it with the birth through grade 5 study. So we have to make sure as we move this forward, we have that cohesive look, that we have to continue to seek that ongoing communications. But in the actions that we'll be drawing is what is the responsibility of the board? What will be board governance actions? What will be policy development that you'll be looking at? What are some things the leadership is going to have to take on and then that we're going to continue to champion going forward? And it isn't just administrators, it's building leaders, it's parent leaders. Then what's the professional learning side that we need to be looking at? What kind of key communications? What's the resource assessment? You know, how do we make sure that we can afford this, both from a funding standpoint, but from a staffing and a staff development and a time standpoint? So we're doing a resource assessment. Then also, what are things that no longer need to be part of our system, and what are some things that need to exit or adjust that we move on out as we move into this next generation of work? So that's how your report is formed, and again, we'll talk more about that later in the discussion. I'm going to ask Susan to talk a little bit about this phase 1 advancements work and some of those key components of the work that we're doing.
Good evening. As you can see in your packet, there are several recommendations that are part and advancements that are part of phase 1. World language competencies. We have been working on world language competencies and exploring how we can help prepare all learners in Edina as they leave our system to be ready to interact globally and looking at world language as part of that. So thinking about every learner having opportunity to be proficient in a language other than English as they leave us. We have been working very closely with our world language department at the secondary level, and they are very engaged in this work at this point. And as we think about how to implement next year, we have several pilots that have been suggested by the world language department teachers themselves that they believe can expand opportunity for our learners in terms of how they learn, when they learn, and what they learn. So we're excited about their involvement in that process. Credit by assessment is an opportunity for learners to demonstrate mastery of standards that have been identified as important in a variety of areas of curriculum here. And so students, rather than perhaps sitting in a traditional course, they would be able to demonstrate their learning in some other way. And we are looking at common assessments for that purpose, portfolios, perhaps creating some way for them to demonstrate their learning that is meaningful to them. Post-secondary partnerships, this work has been ongoing throughout this year, and we continue to navigate potential partnerships with local resources such as universities, technical schools, and even some business partnerships that would allow our students to have internships and perhaps expand their learning beyond what is available in our curriculum. E-learning squared, of course, is always exciting. We, as you know, have been working on expanding opportunity for all of our learners throughout the 6 through 12 program. And Steve Butner and his team have done a really nice job of making sure that all of our students have opportunity to use technology. When we think about it from the perspective of the secondary study and next generation learning, technology is going to be an integral part of that, and it doesn't replace classroom experience and interaction with teachers and advisors, but it can help the student and the parent and the staff here at the school navigate that system together. We also know that kids are highly engaged in technology and prefer to engage in interaction even worldwide with peers in other countries using technology. Personalized advising is something that we have been researching since we began the study last year, and we have looked at national and international models for secondary advising. And there is a difference between having an advisory and an advisor. At our middle school, we have an advisory system. Personalized advising really encompasses having an advocate within perhaps an advisory system or in conjunction with an advisory system. So we are looking at possibly expanding what we are currently doing in our middle school and also then having an advisory in the secondary level all the way through grade 12 and perhaps even beyond that into grade 13. So
the phase 2 is some more recommendations, some more advancements, but it really does tie a lot of things together. We are going to be bringing some direction to the board in May for discussion around grade level configuration at the secondary level. What's the best way that we can service the students as far as how we can provide those services at which site and how that should be shaped and grown and what type of programming do we need to provide. And so we've done a lot of research to take a look at that. But again, how does that all tie together? That would also possibly impact building project. And so we have a lot of information we need to gather before we could really bring that forward to the board. So that's still a phase 2 recommendation, a daily planning schedule, a yearly planning schedule, looking at time differently. The implementation team has done some very deep study on this. They've done some dry runs of what's possible. But again, a determinant of that will be grade level configuration. So before we can make some of these other decisions, we're going to have all these things line up. We will have to determine a time frame, because if we want to implement this in 2015-16, there are some decisions that are going to have to be early fall decisions, probably a September, early October decision. So we know that the recommendations are going to be this flowing process, that we'll have a series of recommendations that we'll ask the board to act on in June. We may come back again in August, again in September, around the secondary study, but also the birth through 5, because this is a big initiative, and we want to be purposeful and planful in the process. Finally, we also want to take a look at different pathways for learning. So when we look at some of the information that we talked about, a lot of research has been done too of how students can learn and some of the opportunities that might be available to them that will be a little bit alternative to that current model we have, even though that model would still be available. So those is kind of phase 2 efforts. We'll be working with the Teaching and Learning Committee on some of that work going forward. Again, this talks about how the recommendations tie together, so the work on educational competencies that the board will be talking about, the power standards, how we use space, all tie together with that will make sure our phase 1 recommendations align with our phase 2. Some of the key areas that were already talked about. E-learning squared, I'm going to ask Steve Butner to just, again, this is an action item later for the board tonight. If he could comment on the work being done there, that would be great. This is a recommendation that was discussed last month and would be moving for a board action on this. Steve?
Thank you. So as you've heard a number of times today, one of our critical components for moving our next generation learning together is the power of technology to help engage our students in learning, to provide opportunities for our students for learning anytime, anywhere, and then also providing resources for our teachers to be able to leverage technology to bring in learning opportunities that we might not find in normal classrooms. And so we've worked closely with all the teachers in the secondary schools, specifically met with 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade teachers to discuss what were their needs going forward and what were some of the opportunities for the technology. We also met with the 5th grade teachers, and from that we really learned that e-learning squared seems to be working fairly well, providing that technology to enhance learning. And so we're recommending that we actually move forward to that, continue to provide professional development, provide a device to our families either through the Best Buy web store or through the district, and then moving out of a area of highly recommended to more of a required phase for our families so that we ensure that that barrier to entry of having a digital device in our instruction is met.
Again, this will be an action item later tonight. With that in mind, if there are questions about the secondary study, I'm going to ask Susan. One area we forgot to mention is that we're going to do a variety of pilots going forward. And so, Susan, if you just want to touch on that at the secondary level, that'd be great.
Over the course of this year, the implementation team, and specifically the 6 teachers who meet every morning at 7 o'clock, have communicated to their 6 through 12 colleagues in reference to our work and have provided opportunity for our teachers who are in the buildings with kids every day to understand the work of this team. Over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, we've invited colleagues in the buildings to submit pilot ideas, and we've done this in a 2-tier approach. The first was to just generate some ideas, and teachers had the opportunity to submit what we called a concept form, and it was essentially a paragraph saying, here's what we would like to do next year, and here's why we believe it fits into the framework of the secondary study. We received 59 of those concept forms, and they came from teachers across the entire middle school and high school program and covered many, many areas of the curriculum. So we reviewed all of those concept forms and happily said to 38 of those teachers or groups of teachers that we would love to know more. So we are asking them to submit a formal proposal for a pilot, and those are due next week. And we will then have a team of an administrator and a few other identified people use a rubric to then evaluate those and move those forward. The areas where we have pilots coming in, integrated content, there were 4 that were approved. Flexible staffing, there were 5. Student design programs, there were 11. Personalized advising, there were 5. World language competencies, there were 5. And then 21st century learning space and or furnishings, there were 8. So those were the 6 areas we identified fit within the framework, and teachers were able to submit ideas that were quite creative and innovative in terms of how we might do things a little differently. Our big criteria, how did it fit in the framework, and first and foremost, how did it improve the learning experience for students?
So these are submitted and approved, or you're still determining which ones you're gonna?
Tier 1 were approved and are now back out for a formal proposal.
Okay.
And the team is supporting their colleagues in completing that proposal form if they need some assistance with that. Because it is 5 or 6 pages long, it's pretty detailed. The concept form was really just a paragraph. So that's where we are. We have finished the concept form approval. 38 of those concepts were approved. And so now those proposals will come back into us for consideration. The timeline is are to be submitted by May 1st with final decisions by May 5th.
And to be implemented next year, the year after?
This is for next year.
Okay.
This is growing our piloting projects. We had a variety of projects that we piloted this year, and we've done assessment to them, and we'll bring a report back to the board. We did share a paper copy with the board earlier, but we'll bring it back to the public of how the pilots have worked thus far. But this is another series of pilots, and some of that one-time funding, where it says strategic work, would help support some of the funding. So that's exactly how we'll use those dollars.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
Can you give an example of a couple of the pilots that were suggested?
The concepts that were considered fitting within the framework and demonstrated that students could potentially benefit in terms of their learning experience. When I think about personalized advising, for example, there was a proposal for looping of advisory teachers at the middle school. There's another one at Valley View that would provide a different advisory experience for grade 9 students, much more aligned with transition to high school, and also looking at college and career curriculum that might be a little more developmentally appropriate for them. And then partnering of teachers in terms of advisory, rather than having an advisory teacher, they would be working with a team of teachers. In terms of world language competencies, there are a couple of proposals from different members of the world language department to identify students in a different way for learning, grouping them for learning, as opposed to just grade level, 7th grade Spanish or 8th grade Spanish, that students would be gathered in a group that would be based on proficiency. So those are some ideas. There's some really interesting ideas around flexible space. And one example that I think is interesting is from Valley View, where the hallways are quite wide. Several teachers have identified areas where with some simple furnishings, they could become learning spaces for students, and to be used by a variety of departments, not just within one department area. So those are some ideas that have come forth.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next up, we have our consent agenda and a motion to approve.
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any additions or, I'm sorry, Rick, you want to walk us through before we go to that?
I certainly can.
It's not long enough yet. You know, we
that's it.
figure we extend her out a little more.
We have personnel recommendations. Again, this is standard business. We do have some terminations and non-renewals. It's that time of year that we are being responsive to that need. We have the expenditures payable that, again, we're asking the board to approve for March 31st and April 21st. We have a variety of lease agreements. Those all tie in with the Edina Community Center. We're asking for the board to support the Edina wrestling program to be a standalone program. Historically, that's been a co-op program over the past several years with Richfield, but now both Richfield High School as well as Edina High School have enough students to direct their own programming. Troy Stein has been able to put a plan together that does financially have a responsibility that will fit the programming as far as funding, as far as space, as far as staffing it. So we're recommending that action move forward. We have a big Google Summit coming up, and then we've got sponsors that we're partnering with. And again, this falls within the district policy. Want board support for that. A variety of commendations, and then again, gifts we're getting from the community, and that would conclude the consent agenda.
Thank you, Rick. Any additions or corrections or items you'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, you're still awake on the other end.
I am still here, yeah.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Next up, we're on to our first of our action items, the EME agreement. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor?
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Gwen provided some earlier background. Any additional things you'd like to add? We appreciate all the work that's gone into this on everybody's part.
Just that I appreciated working with we appreciated working with the negotiations team from EME. It's very difficult to move to a new salary schedule when the current one has been in place for so many years, but we have we've continued moving, so.
Thank you, Gwen. Any additional discussion, comments? There's a lot of history here.
I would just like to publicly thank Gwen and Margot, your team, and the EME negotiating team for the work on the negotiation, but specifically the contract. It's a wonderful opportunity for the district to pilot something new, and I appreciate all of the hard work that went into having the courage and the deep reflection to look into another salary schedule.
Yeah, the current structure has been around since the 1970s, and really appreciate the teachers stepping forward back in August with a proposal, and it took some time, and we appreciate this transition because I think long-term it's a good move for everybody involved, so we thank them for those efforts. Any additional discussion?
And again, I just, reiterating that, although it says, the 1% and 1%, that, the way the numbers, the roll-up costs of around, I think we said, 3.2 million, and then the additional costs, that's how we get to the 4.65 million, just so that it's clear that it's not, that it's more than that.
Thank you, Sarah. Additional discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. I'm sorry, roll call.
Oh.
Late night.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien? Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have e-learning squared. Support for the expansion of e-learning squared. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Steve provided some background early. Any additional background you'd like to share?
Well, just, I guess the only thing I'd say is that.
Could you get a mic?
Come up again.
Get through there.
The technology guy, they don't give him a mic, huh? Who's in charge of the technology, huh?
Well, they got me in the good seats. Good evening, board and superintendent and the community. I'd just like to say is what we look at as e-learning squared is a recognition, I think, of the power of the technology that we can use in the instruction. We've had conversations with the community, with teachers, and with teaching and learning to really identify the power of that. And it really is three ideas, and that is that increasingly we have digital content that can be brought to bear to engage our students and to bring a level of productivity and opportunities to our teaching staff. It is the professional development and the support that we provide our teachers as they look at engaging their students with the technology. And then finally, it is about ensuring that all of our students have a digital device, and with fidelity, they bring it and know how to use that device daily in their instruction. That doesn't mean that they use it every day, but that they have the availability of that device. And that's the power of the technology. It's not taking away from our teachers or not taking away from opportunities that we know and traditionally have been very successful, but it's providing that vast opportunity. So I seek your support in increasing and bringing e-learning squared forward next year.
Thank
May I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Steve, if you could please just give a quick summary on how the eLearning Square program will be implemented in 5th grade, since that's the youngest grade for which we are introducing a device.
Thank you. Much like most of the content that we introduce in teaching, there's a style called introduce, practice, and master. And so what we see is 5th grade is really our opportunity to introduce using technology and having technology that's available more frequently for our students. The idea is not to have that technology leave the classroom, but to have it available. And again, we're not saying that it's getting used every day or all the time, but that it's there and available so that when there's a learning opportunity, we can leverage that technology to be able to use that right away and to increase our learning. And so those devices won't leave those schools, and they'll be there for our teachers.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? So can you just confirm, would this be coming out of the technology fund or where? Just to be clear.
Yeah, thank you. It will be coming out of the technology fund to support this and the professional development as well.
So
Go ahead.
we're going to be adding a lot of devices, presumably having a lot more people accessing. So have you done an analysis of the capacity of the system to be able to meet the needs so that if, all of a sudden we happen to have 40 or 50% of the students accessing the system, do we have that capacity, and do we have the support available within your current budget to help people implement all of this?
It's a great question. Technology continues to expand, and so it is a challenge for our IT departments and education to stay up with that demand. But what we have done is, from what lessons learned last year, we've put in place quite a bit more infrastructure in order to be able to do that. Earlier in the fall, I came back to talk about expanded pipes and bandwidth, and we talked about the increase of the bandwidth. We're also, as we speak, we are putting in additional access points in all of the high schools and secondaries. Will there be at least an access point in every other classroom for the wireless technology? And then we're also ensuring that there'll be access points in the 5th grade classes. In conjunction with the work that the facilities is doing over the summer, we will be putting access points in those buildings that undergo major renovation, Highlands and Creek Valley. They'll be getting an access point in every classroom. So we are really trying to keep up with that. And then the other thing I would say is on the professional development area and ensuring that our teachers have the support they need. I think that the vision that the media centers and the media specialists are starting to evolve around, where our media specialists can become those digital learning specialists with support from the tech para and the media clerk within those media centers, that we're going to be able to provide additional support and training to those teachers to leverage the use of technology.
Last question. In terms of bringing along our families so that they're aware of how the program works, what it's going to look like in, say, a 5th grade classroom versus our, seniors in high school, can you just explain how some of the communication will flow? And maybe Susan can help as well, just so that we're keeping them moving along with their kids.
Communication is a critical component of this project, as well as professional development and having the devices. I like to call out Tim Barrett and Mike Walker, who are major people that have made this project as successful as it has been. And part of the way they do that is the communication. Tim does frequently use our school messaging system to communicate on regular intervals with our families throughout the project. We also will be holding parent information nights in the next couple weeks, and so we'll be having those at Valley View, Southview. We've also have extended the opportunity to meet in the elementaries as well. We provided the elementary principals with some documentation with the help of the communications that they'll be sending it out. And then one of our big focuses is in the fall is the digital footprint and ensuring that our students have a good understanding of the importance of positive behavior on the internet with technology. And to that end, we're working again with the media specialists in our communities to do using a curriculum called Common Sense Media to really talk about a curriculum and standards-based content on what is really the good ways of using the technology, so we promote the good ways and mitigate the negative ones. And so that will be working here still in the spring, and then we'll have parent nights within the falls. And we're actually doing a digital passport, so our students will be able to earn passports that they say they're a good digital citizen, as well as working on certifying our schools that we're digital, Common Sense Media digital certified schools. And so we'll continue to really have strong communications on the end of how's it going, as well as what to do and what are some of the good expectations of using technology.
Great, thanks, Steve.
I think just to add to that, we've, part of what we've been able to do with communications is really listen to our families, whether it's through a survey. I know at a recent Parent Leadership Council meeting, we had a couple of parents speaking to how do we help our kids, because how do we do homework when homework doesn't look like it did when we went there, and the technology and things. So we're really trying to make sure that we're partnering and continuing those conversations as well, so it's a learning experience for everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments?
Yeah, I just want to again congratulate Steve and his team and do a special shout out to Mike Walker. Mike was part of the journey when we had one-to-ones back with the laptops, and Mike has just been a champion of this with families and staff. And then Tim has been our go-to guy with the partnership with Best Buy. And they were so committed that they're here to see this to the end when the board votes on this. So I appreciate them being here tonight. And Steve and his team, this is a big moment for us to take this step. It's been a very thoughtful process, and the great things are going to come from it.
Maybe we should touch on the free and reduced aspect of the store and how that works.
Yes.
For the free and reduced lunch kids.
Yep. Again, we understand technology is an incredible tool in our teaching and learning, so we want to make sure there's no digital divide. And so we are providing through a checkout process through our district a device for our students of need in the free and reduced lunch. So what we do is we provide them an opportunity of either going to the Best Buy web store and taking advantage of that if they choose, or if they don't, what we do is check out a Chromebook, which is the most popular device. We don't label it anyway, so we keep it anonymous as possible, and we provide that student that device for the time that they're in the institution, and then we change it out every 3 years. So it is much like our parents and how they're using the device. They really don't try to differentiate that, but make them equal access to it. And the other piece that we are very cognizant of is internet access in the homes, and so we work very strongly with the Edina Give and Go and other community organizations to, when we identify schools that, or parents or families that don't have internet access, to get them the internet access they need so that they can be online as well.
I think your team is just to be commended, because with this program, now every student from 5th through 12th grade will either have access to or actually have a device, and we've done it in a fiscally responsible manner.
Thank you all. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor of the
Roll call.
Call. Roll call.
roll call? Do we get to go home yet?
No, we don't.
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is the Concord Elementary School addition. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the contract with Black and Dew for the kindergarten edition at Concord. Margot, a little background?
A little background both on Concord agenda item and the next agenda item for the Cornelia kindergarten edition. In similar fashion as our previous construction bids that we've had, they did come in over budget. It is the market right now. We're hearing from other districts that they are experiencing it also. So just wanted to quickly talk about some solutions that, since I received this final bid information that we're working on, because if you combine the two together, we're a little over $470,000 over budget. So there's some possible solutions to that. One is cut or value engineer, quote unquote, something out of the project. Another would be to use some capital dollars. an option that isn't available to us, since we were talking about a different budget tonight, is we can't take dollars out of the general fund. So that is not an option. I want to be clear that this is a different type of budget issue. And then I did call the Department of Education because the scope of the contract hasn't changed for the two additions. The construction environment is just significantly higher, even though we adjusted projections in February. And they are hearing from other districts that this is also occurring. And so they're allowing an option as long as the scope of the contract or the construction hasn't changed. If we submit that change as a result of the bids, they will revise the approval letter from the commissioner to reflect that change. So I've also worked and researched with our financial consultants that we also can adjust our lease levy to fund the change, which if we did end up going through that, that would be an additional $2 annually in taxes on the average taxpayer. We don't have all our research on all these components completed yet as of today. My recommendation is you approve both the Concord and Cornelia addition because if we delay it, it will significantly impact our ability to open in time for school. That we will figure this budget component out through the options I just talked about. We'll work with Finance Committee the beginning of May, and more than likely be bringing a recommendation forward to adjust the lease levy component. There might be some value engineering, maybe some components out of capital, but we'll bring that forward in at the May board meeting.
Thanks, Margot. Any questions?
So you would like us to move forward, but not, I just want to be clear that we're not going to approve an addition that's $400,000 over budget, so.
That's what we're doing.
So if the state, for example, if this option wasn't available, we have to make that budget balance. We're going to either have to take it out of the project. So for example, there's some switching of kindergarten and art rooms in both projects. You know, that would be a conversation. What's the cost of that? Is that something we do or not? What's the cost of furniture, fixtures, and equipment? And look at capital funding. We would have to resolve this internally, and we have options. They're not great options, but there are options to be able to do that. So my recommendation is to move forward with the additions because to not move forward with approval tonight would, we wouldn't be able to open with an early start, or it would significantly impact that opening. And then we will, in some form or fashion, we will balance this and make this work. And if I had, my recommendation, if I had to give it tonight, will be that we will move forward with requesting additional lease levy funds. Again, there's a little bit more research to do around that, but that's my, if you kind of want to know where I think we're headed. And we also, Finance Committee has some, certainly we'll work with Finance Committee on May 8th to review all that information and then bring it forward to you.
And Wold was, felt good about both of these two contracting companies?
We have worked with both of them, yes.
Okay, good.
And to clarify, these two additions or 2 points on the agenda, the Concord and Cornelia, is to add a classroom for the expanded all-day kindergarten.
Correct.
Additional discussion? So we have the Concord motion on the floor. Roll call?
No, Cornelia.
I'm sorry.
No, it is Concord.
Concord.
I'm sorry.
Concord.
Concord. Wishful thinking.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
I don't think we can.
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have the Cornelia Elementary School addition. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the contract with Doral Construction. Any additional discussion? I saw the alternate. Is the intention to do the alternate, or is that a question at this point?
The intention and the recommendation is to do the alternate for $11,000. It has to do with where the building connects, and trying to, when we connect to Terrazzo, trying to keep that connection so that we have a district standard if we weren't connecting to that. But we want the addition to look similar to the part of the building that it's connecting to. So I would recommend that we do that alternate.
Yeah, and I would support that because the terrazzo seems to be a permanent fix versus tiles or something else that we always have to fix or repair, so.
And terrazzo, you mean the speckled flooring?
Yeah. The steps you walk down here that are 50-plus years old and still look so nice, that's right. Additional discussion or comments? Roll call, please.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have garbage, refuse, and recycling services. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Margot?
Better news to report on this bid. It's been 5 years since we conducted a bid for the refuse and recycling, and I'm happy to report that with this bid, there is a reduction in cost from current services, estimating that to be between $4,000 and $5,000 on an annual basis, which is good. Also, this bid, we've expanded our recycling efforts in the last 5 years, so it more clearly delineates those services. And this would be for a 5-year term. And you can see the calculations in your board packet, but would recommend waste management as our recycling and refuse services. The other component that they will have, they have their fleet is partially compressed natural gas at this point. By the first of the year, it will all be in that the compressed gas, which helps with noise. And sometimes we do get complaints from our neighbors when there's refuse removal, and it also is more environmentally friendly, so more green.
Thanks, Margot. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville? Aye. O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have special education transportation. A motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Margot, again?
2 years ago, we bid out special ed transportation services. We received 2 bids this year. Successful bidders, the current provider, Adams Services, and there is a 0% increase from what we're currently paying. So I would recommend continuing, and we have been pleased with our service with Adams. Recommend approval.
Thank you. And what's the annual budget? I see it's just basically a daily rate. What's our annual
It
on
depends on the number of special ed students we have, but it's roughly between $600,000 and $700,000.
And maybe this isn't the time for the discussion, but the cost of bringing it in-house?
We believe we can provide the service more economically in-house. The issue is we would need to invest in more buses, special ed buses in particular, obviously, to provide that service and then be able to house those buses. So long term, if we are able to explore that, we would like to do that.
And the transportation analysis that was done 2 or 3 years ago
Yes.
did recommend that the district consider that. And so as we look at our building project going forward and we study our transportation needs, I think we'll include that as a study component.
Excellent.
And this is a 2-year contract again?
This is a 2-year.
And we brought up the same thing in finance and facilities and asked if we could do that.
Okay, great. Additional? Roll call, please.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. We've got policies 427, 903, 904. Can I get a motion to combine those?
So moved.
been moved and seconded to combine policies 427, 903, and 904 into a single motion. Roll call, please.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Those motions have been combined. Can I get a motion to bring them to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
I've got one question about 903. In paragraph 5B, and I can't believe at this time of night I'm asking this, but it says this person may be detained by a building administrator or a person designated by principal building administrator. Should there be an article before principal building administrator?
Probably.
Like the word the.
And I think we can accept that as a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
And David, would you please repeat the paragraph, the location?
903-2, bottom of the page. 5B,
By B, thank you.
page 355 in our packet. Good catch. We've seen this before. Any other
No,
any
there were
other
no,
major corrections since we saw it last?
no, there were no changes. Because one of them, we're just rescinding the policy, and the other two are exactly the same as we saw last meeting, except for the pickup that David just found.
Additional questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cella?
Aye.
Goldstein?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Neville?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Patzloff?
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman?
Aye.
Motion carries. On to discussion. Budget alignment plan. Comments,
the-
thoughts, how we want to walk through this?
We have the information that Dr. Dressen and I presented and would entertain any questions that the board has.
We also had got some awful good data. We'll be taking this information back, but I wouldn't seek any further direction from the board. We'll also, before we would come back to the board, we'll be reviewing this through the Board Finance and Facility Committee as well. But again, we'd entertain any questions the board might have or comments.
One of the things I was going to bring up that I kind of brought up when we were talking earlier was, and this is just my little numbers mind, looking at things and playing with numbers, but based on where we are with numbers provided by Mary and based on the information of 24 equals 5 hours, 23 students equals 4 hours, et cetera, I put together a little Excel spreadsheet just for myself to say, okay, in each building, here's where we're at, here's the number of sections, et cetera. If Cornelia is averaging, say, 23 students a classroom, based on current policy, here's where we would be at for numbers of hours of pairs. But on the other hand, you look at another building that may only have 19 kids average per classroom, current policy would state that we don't have pairs in that room. Just looking at those numbers and doing some just basic hours math, instead of looking at it as everybody gets the same regardless of number of students of this 1.25 hours of para time, trying to at least look at and consider, you know, if it's 23, it's 4 hours, if it's this, it's 0. I come up with a difference of, say, 48 hours total under the old way of looking at pairs versus say, about 32, 33 hours under our, as it's currently proposed. And I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other. I guess I would say that I hope we could at least entertain that and look at it. And I've just shared my geeky numbers with Margot. It's just something to think about and look at it differently and see if there's a way that we could come up with it. I do realize that there's no way that that doesn't cost us more money when we're talking more hours, but I still think it's worth taking a look at. That's my thought.
But I guess when I was reading the graph, I wasn't thinking that it was you got an extra hour for every student above. I thought it was when you hit the upper limit 24, then you got 1 additional hour, rather than getting an hour per student.
It's currently at 1.25 hours per section, per classroom, based on the, 18 to 22 in the
Yep.
proposal. And then it's adding more hours once we get to 24.
Right, but you were saying, you were proposing a whole different schedule that you were. yours
Looking
was
at it
flex-
based on
okay.
the old way, because one of our
Okay.
discussion points tonight is also looking at when do we add additional hours. So, like I said, I just was
Yep.
playing with this in my mind based on the feedback that we're getting. But again, I mean, that would also mean though, in a class of 19, no para support.
Well, but we'd have to
So
have
you'd have to
Margot
look
run
at the
numbers and
balance.
see.
Yep, we can take a look at that.
And the elementary principals have looked at it too, so we've got to look at how that,
Yep.
how we staff
Right,
that
right.
too.
It's
And
just-
so
it's
they have a
just a way
model
of
that
thinking
allows
of
for
it.
some staffing options, but we will pursue that.
So I've got a couple of questions on the math science. The first was, one of the speakers asked this question about, could we charge a fee, a science fee? Is that an option? How does that work? Have we considered that? That's one question, by the way.
Okay. So later tonight, in the appendix, you see we've taken a look at fees, and there are some real limitations to where you can charge fees. The board has to have a hearing around it.
Yeah, fees are very much defined by statute, and there's really limited categories for what you can charge fees for, so we'd have to really look at that to see if we could even come into one of the exceptions for that.
My belief here, but I'd ask for clarification, is that the district has recently done an analysis of fees with neighboring districts to see whether or not we are competitive, if we're way below or in any case above. And my understanding is that we are currently in line. Is that accurate?
So that's for
That's
activities.
activities.
For activities,
For
right.
activities.
No, we're talking.
No, they're different for academic. I know the academic fees are another discussion, and the board has had concern expressed from parents to date about charging a fee for an academic program.
Yeah, and there's state statute that.
And then, yes, and under state statute, that's the tough thing, is to charge fees for academics.
My concern is equity with everything on that. I think that there is great fundraising capacity within the community. I think it's a question of how we approach it. We're fortunate to have the strength of Edina Education Fund and Edina Give and Go, which is brand new. I also know that for the wonderful things that they've done, our community participation is very low. So I think it's something to just encourage the community to look at the resources that are available and encourage families who are able to review the options we have and participate. For families who can support the district through the Education Fund or Give and Go or any other means, the funds are useful, and the partnership with the district is very strong. I do commend both of those organizations for stepping with the district to identify what needs exist, how can we meet the needs of all learners as equitably as possible, and distribute the resources that we have. So I believe that those appear to be quite underutilized opportunities for our community where there's room for a lot of growth. You had more questions.
My second question, and this is probably one for you to think about and come back to, but the second question is, we've heard this questions about, volunteer burnout. So how comfortable are we that we will be able to replicate the services in the math and science if we get rid of these positions?
Yep, so I think that would be where we'll come back. I mean, we know that we're expanding our volunteer efforts through our community education resource, and I think we have a more seamless approach. But I can't disagree that it's becoming more challenging, to have that volunteer who is going to be that consistent, accountable volunteer, because if you ask for a volunteer and that volunteer doesn't show up, that class is stuck. So I understand all that. And principals, again, have done some problem solving around that, and we'll just have to come back again with a recommendation. But I thought the sharing tonight was very good, and we'll continue to explore what's possible with that approach.
Okay.
I have a question. I commend the Finance Facilities Committee for trying to go through this. Sorry if you can't hear me. I have a question a little bit about the Writing Center and the Math Center and the discrepancy in the amounts needed for both of those. So we have $124,000 and change for the Writing Center and the $69,000 for the Math Center. So I'm curious why there's such a discrepancy there, and and I need some clarification on the Writing Center. I was under the understanding that it was 9th grade peer reviews. So I'm trying to understand the 1.8 FTE needed there, and then I'm sure that's what's related to the expense, but that seems high to me.
I won't do justice in answering that question directly, but what I will say is that we'll take that concern back and discuss that and bring that information back to the board.
The reason I bring it up is that's $55,000 difference between the two, and if we are concerned about the math and science paras at an 86,000, if there's some wiggle room there, we've already come a long way to that 86.
And I guess I think we had brought this up at a previous meeting. Again, what it boils down to, I think, when it's 1.8, it's 0.6 FTE, so 60% of a full-time employee working on our writing center. And I think some of us had concerns around the fact that, you know, it is very much peer-based, so I guess I'm wondering why it takes that much of an FTE to fulfill that need. Although, you know, we see that that's a good need, but also I think some of the other concerns we had discussed too were, you know, the teachers requiring kids attending or offering extra points for attending the Writer Center and not necessarily doing it based on need. Although I'm sure that there is need, but I think we just need to delve into some of that before we continue to fund it at that level.
If I could make a point of clarification between both of your question comments. The Writing Center and Math Center and the detailed information you received they list a variety of enhancements that were requested throughout our process and then the total dollar amount. If you go further over to the right, it says net amount, and those two are not part of the recommended enhancements rather than specifically, that doesn't, because it's zero there. Specifically, what we did with the secondary is allocate just a dollar amount for enhancements of the $112,000 that we spoke to in our presentation, and the secondary is planning on modifying the writing and the math centers within their FTE. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. So they are not getting that funding support.
Yeah.
That was that was what they requested. But they were not able to honor it. So we were able to honor the intervention of $20,000 per site, and they're doing it from an internal then. So they are modifying it and having to do it from an internal staffing standpoint. And remember, their allocations are so many FTEs per students, and so then they're having to do an internal adjustment. But that was the request that we weren't able to honor.
Okay, so just to be clear for those out there, the packet, these are the requests, not what we're recommending. Is that correct?
Well, in the net amount, I would look at the PowerPoint. In this detailed part, it's over to the right. In the net amount is what is being recommended. The other is listed just so that the public knows that we did consider a variety of enhancements, a variety of reductions, and over to the right on the enhancements is what's currently being recommended.
Thank you, Margot, for the clarification.
I guess I had a question maybe for Randy. This will probably go to. A couple people had talked about the gifted and talented language arts expansion, and talking specifically that it was only benefiting a small group of our students. And so I guess I have a couple questions. If we're just looking at numbers for gifted and talented, what percentage of our students qualify for that service? And then if you could also go on to explain how we've looked at that with the math program and how that has benefited all the students by including that in the RTI model.
Sure, I might ask Chad to jump in on percentages here, but gifted education services is an integral part of the RTI framework. It is about meeting the needs of all the kids that we have. In math, we have created a Tier 3 intervention service. So Tier 3 is intensive intervention because the students are several grade levels above their peers, and so they get something that is different to meet their needs and where they're at in mathematics. And we've been collecting data around that suggests very strongly that those the students that are in that programming are meeting their expected growth targets. The language arts Tier 3 intervention proposal is modeled after that math intervention program, and so what we would be looking at is a 0.4 FTE at each of the sites. So in grades 4 and 5, students would have this Tier 3 intervention around language arts. The impact that has is more widespread than just the students participate in language arts, because when students go to a Tier 3 intervention, that lowers instructional size for teachers during those times, whether it's mathematics or with language arts. And as any teacher will attest to, it is easier to build connections and to get to students and to personalize learning when you have fewer numbers in that classroom at a time. That's a reality. So when students are pulled for one of these interventions, Tier 3 in math, or if this is accepted later on in May, then that reduces the instructional size, and that starts to impact all of the students across the system. So there are other impacts that are broader than just in that peer intervention system itself. We can certainly dig up the percentages and describe that, but when we look at the students that make up our Edina population, we have a large percent of students that qualify for GT services, but we can bring those exact percentages back.
So, Randy, I believe that we were given data earlier that said that the GT language arts students were not meeting expected growth in comparison to the rest of the students who were meeting expected growth, and so that this is an effort to get each of the students to get to the growth level they're supposed to be at. And I don't know if that wasn't discussed tonight, but we've seen that before.
Correct, and I thank you for bringing that back up. And so with the 0.2 FTE model that we've had in the past, we did not see the data to support that the growth was happening for their expected growth targets. And so we really felt that that wasn't an effective way for students to grow to their expected level. So we're looking at a slightly different model, a more intensive intervention to meet their need.
I don't know that I want to ask this question, but I'm going to. If we go back before we started RTI and look at in the elementary and look at our head count, and I don't know how best to describe it other than head count of teaching staff, not necessarily all teachers, but paras and whatever, and then look at it now with RTI, with the math specialists, and really quantify where we're at. You know, tonight we heard a discussion about all the cuts that have hit elementary, but compared to some other places, it's been pretty minimal. Just really to look at those numbers so we can start to think about really, you know, where are we at. And I think we've become more targeted and focused on who we are staffing and where we are staffing, but I don't think we've always done a good job of articulating that.
And I think it's fair to say where we're trying to get tighter is to identify the specific needs in our students and how to align resources best to those needs. And I believe if we look at a long history here, we have increased instructional support in the schools for students to meet those needs. And so part of the RTI framework has been to identify where that needed support is and then to shift our resources to create that support.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is there some way to frame that or to talk about that? And I don't know if it's student teaching staff ratio or what, but because it really has evolved over time.
And Randy, the point would be to clarify the current system that we have or to restructure.
No, the
better understand
the point is
end
to
goal.
help the public understand, yes, we're seeing cuts, but we're also seeing ads. The cuts everybody remembers, but the ads are overlooked. And so really to demonstrate, yes, we've made changes, but it's really changes versus just cuts. And so, and it's again, it's how do we best use our resources? So And is there a way to frame that, that, you know, people just walking in today can understand how we've evolved the system, so.
So, you know, I agree with what you're saying, which is that we've reallocated resources to make sure that we're meeting the needs in a, you know, using the old model behind and going on to a different approach. I do think we do need to revisit to make sure that math and science, in terms of what we're looking at, isn't going to fall behind in this proposal.
Absolutely.
And I would echo that. I mean, certainly the communication to the board in the last couple of days, everything shared tonight, shares what I agree with, what I'm hearing everybody here agrees with, is there's clearly value in what's happening with math and science. There's clearly value in para support at the kindergarten level. I don't believe that there's any question about this, nor do I expect any conversation to question if that's the direction we should be going. Of course it is there. What I see and what I thank Margot for articulating is that we have a systemic issue on funding that exists from outside the district. It's not unique to our district. I believe that we do have great capacity to find creative solutions, but it's not an issue that can be addressed this year and then solved. It will be here next year and the year after, and that's what I thank Margot again for helping to illustrate, but would ask that we can try to continue to communicate to the community. This is part of the way education is funded. Thanks, Representative Rosenthal, for being here this evening and the work that you're doing at the legislature. This is an effort that is clearly statewide. It's not just our district. It is something that we need to take a look at a much larger level to attempt to change how education is funded. In terms of looking at our issues here, what I appreciate from the principals team in taking a look at this particular recommendation that's brought before the board tonight is I know they've tried to keep the cuts away from any impactful instruction. The question I would ask, but I believe it's one they've already discussed, is there an alternative, $86,000, that would not impact the classroom? And I don't know of that. I'm sure that this is what they have looked at. We certainly have another month to discuss this. I don't believe that one student's needs can be pitted against another. Every student deserves that best learning opportunity, whether it's the proposals that are on the table this evening for para support, math and science support, RTI support, language arts. They're all important. They're all important. If it's just one child, it's the most important thing for that child. This is their learning experience, and that is what we are here to provide. So that creative solution needs to look a little different, and it's probably, as Randy indicated, it's in reshuffling these resources. It won't look the same as the way we've been delivering it. And that's not because the old way wasn't good. It definitely has value, and we see that. We don't have a lot of options.
Well, particularly when it's year after year that we have to cut.
It will be year after
It's
year.
not like that we can say, well, if we make these cuts this year, then for the next 2 years we're good and there's nothing we have to do, because come next year, we're going to be in the same boat. We're still going to have to make cuts because the funding's not going to keep up with just the, increase in the cost of things that we have to buy. So we're going to be looking for other cuts, and we're still going to have then new needs that we're going to say we've got to have, it'll be new enhancements. It's a never-ending cycle, and it's not easy, and it's not fun.
And I would add to that after 2+ years of going through this and now seeing us, it's given me an opportunity to see us go through all of our contracts with all of our bargaining units. And the reality is, when the majority of our expenses, as have been said tonight, are people. And when you get so much money from the state funding, an increase over last year and the year before, there's so much money, but then just one contract negotiation with only 1% raises or whatever, roll-up costs, et cetera, take up the majority of that. And when we're talking about people, that's what and it sounds so awful to say it's $86,000, it's just a line item, because it's people. But do we take it out of that contract negotiation versus that one? Where do those dollars come from? Because ultimately it's people. And it is difficult, although I do think as we continue to move forward and we go into negotiations with various bargaining units, we have to continue to remember that, you know, there is a bottom line.
Any other budget comments? Yeah, even if we were to keep up with inflation, we'd be way ahead. We aren't keeping up with inflation. We're 2% behind inflation, I'd say, on average. Is that a good number, Margot? Yeah, so you're falling behind 2% just before you start. So, additional questions, comments? Where are we at here? We did budget, instructional side guidelines. Did we touch on that enough? Size guidelines?
Do we
Educational.
have a visual for the screen for specifically the kindergarten?
So we did show that at the.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Educational competencies, we touched on that. Anything else there?
We'll just say that, I mean, this is a major shift that we're going to look at competencies versus course requirements as we move forward. We're going to walk into this. It's nothing that we're going to move and quickly on, so that we may leave this as an open document for us to continue to discuss and make sure that we have it correct. We're continuing to do some auditing around that, and Randy and his team and the teachers will continue to work with this in common assessments. But I commend Randy, his team, Susan Tennyson. A lot of work has been done by the team to get to this point.
So my only comment on that is that as I read through all those documents, I still have a lot of questions as to the specifics of what we're going to be doing even within phase one. And so to the extent that we're looking to approve this document as it's written, I'm going to need more information.
And it's probably going to stay an open document for a while.
So just to clarify, so this document that we got in our
Not
packet.
that document.
Not this one.
I'm talking the educational competency document that.
Okay.
Page 382.
It's the one page.
382.
Ah, okay.
That,
It's on the next
that's
one,
still a
and I had a
document under
question about that
development.
You got 382?
This one.
I'm working up
If,
there.
if I might add to the educational competencies, one of the things that we're excited about is we look to other organizations. We look at World Savvy, we look at Asia Society, we look at Harvard Global Education. We are right on track with our global competence definition and our indicators. It is right in alignment with those organizations. So you look globally at what people are talking about, what they're saying. What we're developing is right in line with that, and it really came from our staff, it came from our community, it came from the research, and so that's kind of a summary of how we're continuing to audit what is in there. And further, MDE's World Best Workforce Competencies are embedded within the within this document, and I would offer that we even go a little bit further in how we describe this well-roundedness, this commitment to health and wellness, because those are key elements that provide pillars of support around learning. And so we're excited about how it's developing. We feel like it's in line with international organizations, and we'll continue to make it a better document.
Thank you, Randy. Additional questions, comments? Next, we're on to grade 9 GPA.
Last year's secondary academic study, this year's support from our secondary implementation team is to continue to move forward with a request for the board to count the grade 9 courses in the GPA for students. Some rationale for that would include that on a student's transcript, they have their 9th grade courses listed. Currently, the GPA of students who have a lower grade in one class in grades 10 through 12 are more greatly impacted, since that GPA is consisting of fewer classes than if it was consisting of the 4-year range. With that above, or with this above change, the GPA would more accurately be represented across all the courses that would be on the transcript. And another significant element is that currently colleges recalculate the GPA based on what's in ninth grade. So even though we may have a GPA that we are articulating to the students, the colleges recalculate that to incorporate the ninth grade into it to look at that full 9 through 12 picture. We do fully realize that there still are some concerns with staff that this could negatively impact students, and we need to continue to vet some of that out and ensure that we've explored all those concerns before we're ready for that to be an action item with the board.
I'm getting feedback that in fact, colleges don't across the board recalculate our GPAs and include the ninth grade grades. That I'm hearing that colleges who are recalculating are doing a calculation that is geared to what they're most interested in. So they might recalculate by throwing out Phi-Ed or health or choir, band, orchestra, anything that they don't consider a core class, and that across the board, colleges aren't just putting in our ninth grade grades. So they see them on the transcript, they look at them as a part of the student's history, and there's a progression, or they're either going up or they're going down or whatever, but they're not recalculating. So if we're using that as like a major reason, I think we just need to go back and make sure of why we're doing it. Because if they're not recalculating and we're saying it doesn't make any difference because they're already doing it, and they're not, we should be clear on that. So just more information before we vote, I guess.
Certainly.
And not that we should do what other districts are doing, but what are our neighboring districts doing in terms of ninth grade GPA?
Depends, I would suppose, if they're 9 to 12 high schools and we're at 10 to 12 high schools.
Right, right.
Yep. Yeah, so the vast majority of schools nationally are 9 through 12, and that'll be a 9 through 12 transcript.
Additional questions, comments, discussion? On to secondary plan recommendations.
So again, this is that larger document. I thank Susan Tennyson and Susan Brott for their work in formulating it. It reads similar to the plan that the board approved in June. It shows the advancement work. I think it's going to be a living document, and when we have specific actions that we're asking the board to take, we'll bring it to you in a motion. So as we get deeper into this around personal advising or world competencies, that we'd bring it specifically, if it's a governance issue that we're bringing forward, it would bring it through a board action specific versus this report. This report's going to continue to evolve. Again, we have a phase 1, phase 2, and I know that it's going to need some discussion before we continue moving it along, but it's again a framework that we're working with that is moving a big system in a very systematic way.
So we're not approving this document. You said that when there is an action item that's governance related, it would come to us. But let me finish where I'm going on this, because when we approved this document, we were told that implementation would be approved by the board, and so that the parameters that we agreed to were, I would say, general in scope. And so I would still expect that when we get to the point where we're going to actually implement specific things, that those would come to the board.
That's correct.
Because right now, this is still
a work in progress.
Right.
Yep.
So we're not going to see this as an action item in May, for example.
I think it's something we'll talk about more as a board, is how we want to move it forward. We know this is the work we're doing, and we want to make sure that the board is giving us the right charge around this work. And so I think we can wrestle with it at our work session a little bit to give us better direction, whether we approve this document formally, whether we get, again, I think anytime there is a specific program option, or, a specific action item that requires board action to make sure that it is implemented with fidelity, then it would come as a specific action. Does that make sense?
Depending upon how you define, see, it's getting late. Depends on how you define an action item that requires a
Yeah.
governance decision. So hopefully we're on the same page on that. If we're not, then
Right,
I'm
that's
not
right.
okay with it.
Yeah, but I mean, each action in that list, I don't necessarily think it requires a board action. is my
I would
point.
agree.
Yeah.
Yes, don't believe that every single item here requires board action.
That's right.
Anything else in secondary plan?
I just had a couple of questions, maybe point of clarification. Some notes I had made around, it was on the page called Educational Competencies, DW1. Under the actions so far for this year, so the 2013-14 year, you know, we just reviewed the educational competencies, but it said that there was a draft of enduring skills, and I was just curious if we had seen that, or
So this is a name change is probably
Oh.
the issue here. So when we started this work, it was really trying to identify global competencies, enduring skills, and literacies. That was the language we were using. And as that work continued to evolve, we dropped that long title and just shrank it to educational competencies.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And then another question was under the S-3 personalized learning options. And under this year's actions was completed a special education strategic plan. And then I guess additionally on top of that was just, you know, within the budget where we were talking about the $200,000, you know, adjustments. So I was wondering, I'm not very familiar with the strategic plan for special education.
So the plan hasn't been finalized yet. So we've completed the work on it. It's in a refinement stage.
Okay.
And then it'll come to the board. But there's some staffing change. Again, the approach is changing. It's aligning with what we're doing with Next Generation.
Okay.
But we'll have the board will have a look at that. I think we meet next week on it with our consultant to finalize that.
Anything else? We're on to meeting dates.
Again, these are a similar calendar to what we've kept in the past. It's certainly open for board discussion if this is still the format that we want to use of that monthly meeting in that time frame. I think it fits into the rhythm of the school district, but it would be something that if board members would like to look at differently, we certainly could do that. We would want that finalized in May so that we could have the posting and get all the reservations done that we need.
I'm seeing two different December. I'm seeing a December 2nd tax hearing date on the second page here. Is that an old?
That's the county date.
Okay, that's the county date. So we're still correct with the 15th.
That's
okay.
correct.
That's just the truth in taxation one.
Okay. Anything else? Next. Policies?
.413, the harassment policy has been reviewed with MSBA and NSBA. There's just basic language updates that are included in the version that's in our documents. So if there's any questions, we'll take this back to the policy committee to discuss one more time before it comes back. So happy to make any notes. And 435, move on.
Keep going, yes.
Yep,
Keep going.
435. In this case, the language is intended to cover a broader scope. That was part of our discussion at the last policy committee meeting. So the language, some of the amendments that we see in the document represent language amendments that are intended to address board approval of MOUs, but not including MOUs as appendices.
And a lot of this language is taken out because a lot of this is covered by the new teacher evaluation program that will be
Correct.
put into place. So this policy is superseded by that.
That's it for policy notes.
Policy's good. Okay, information? Announcements?
Again, the board has a work session on May 5th. Legislature is moving along, and we're tracking that, and funding is one of the things we are tracking, so we're looking for support in that arena. Our testing window is soon to close, and I know we have busy months and busy weeks ahead for our students, and we wish them the best and appreciate all the work that they and the teachers and the families are giving toward that work. And also several of the national reports are out, and Edina was recognized by U.S. News and World Report, which we feel is much more broad in its look, successful in the top 200. The reason that that's a top 200 versus a top 100 is just that there's simply so many specialized high schools today. So many charter schools, so many academies, so many unique settings that for a public school to be in that range, it's a real compliment again to the services and the programs and the work that's done in our classrooms and in our homes each and every night. So it's a great success.
Excellent. Anything we're missing? Longest meeting I've ever been at.
Mm-hmm.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any objection to adjourning at this time? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
We'll adjourn.